Chapter 1519. So you're the successor of the sky-devouring demonic palace. However, you've injured my elder. Do you think my sect is easy to bully? Rumble. Unparalleled heavenly might rolled out. Sect leader Butian's voice exploded between heaven and earth. That boundless and terrifying pressure instantly caused the black-clothed man's expression to change greatly. The black-robed man had only opened the second gate of heaven, but he was from the sky-devouring demonic palace, and he cultivated the sky-devouring demonic technique and the extremely rare spirit-devouring battle physique. Even an immortal realm expert who had opened the third gate of heaven was no match for him. Even if he encountered someone who had opened the fourth gate of heaven, he could still retreat safely. This was the foundation of the successor of a supreme orthodoxy. Not only was his cultivation base terrifying, but he also cultivated supreme techniques. His starting point was much higher than ordinary cultivators. Senior Meng Tian. Disciple Tianma Luo is here to challenge the white-robed Shensi. Senior Meng Tian, are you trying to bully the weak? Although Tianma Luo was afraid of Meng Tian, he believed that Meng Tian would not attack him. After all, Meng Tian's seniority made him fearless. Rumble. Sect leader Butian suddenly appeared. He looked at Tianma Luo with a cold expression. He wanted to kill him with a slap, but Tianma Luo was the successor of the sky-devouring devil palace. If he personally suppressed him, he would be labeled as a bully. Moreover, the sky-devouring demonic palace would not sit by and do nothing when the older generation attacked the younger generation. Although Meng Tian was not afraid of the sky-devouring demonic palace, the palace was backed by the sky-devouring demonic lord. Such a ferocious person indeed made Meng Tian extremely wary. The white-robed Shensi is in seclusion. He's not accepting any challenges. Go back to where you came from. Meng Tian said coldly. Senior Meng Tian, you must be joking. The white-robed Shensi is famous in the chaos space. I'm here because I admire him, and I want to spar with him. Senior Meng Tian, are you looking down on me? Do you think Tianma Luo is not a match for the white-robed Shensi? Tianma Luo paused for a moment before changing the topic, or does your sect look down on my heaven-devouring devil palace? Do you think that the white-robed god-child will be the strongest in the next eon? Do you think that the heaven-mending sect will become the strongest orthodoxy in the 11th eon? Heavenly Demon Luo's words were full of malicious intent. He clearly knew that sect master Butian would not attack him, so his words were full of traps. No matter how sect master Butian responded, the heaven-mending sect would fall into a predicament. Junior, you have a sharp tongue. Do you really think I don't dare to suppress you here? What kind of person was sect leader Butian? He knew that this junior was using words to provoke him, but as the leader of a sect, he naturally wouldn't lose his composure because of a few words. Meng Tian was, Meng Tian's, he. And that was Meng. Meng sect, what I said is the truth. I didn't come here today to provoke your sect. I just want to meet the white-robed Shensi and discuss Tao with him. After that, I'll turn around and leave. I won't dare to be disrespectful to your sect, Tianma Luo said in a deep voice. At this moment, sect master Butian's expression became colder and colder. He really wanted to slap the other party to death, but he was also hesitating whether or not he should attack. If Lu Bai had not fallen into a deep slumber, he would have naturally sent this person away. However, now that Lu Bai had a problem, there was simply no one in the younger generation of the heaven-mending sect who was a match for this celestial demon Luo. As for the immortal realm elders that had opened the fourth heavenly gate, they could naturally beat them back. However, this would give them the reputation of bullying the weak. Moreover, the outside world would think that the heaven-mending sect had no successors. Just as sect master Butian was hesitating, the sound of footsteps rang out from behind him, accompanied by a calm voice. You want to challenge Lu Bai? Do you have the qualifications? Yi Xian quietly appeared, and even the heaven-mending sect master wasn't able to catch his trajectory. As for the heavenly demon Luo, his expression also changed as he looked at Yi Xian with bewilderment. Very strong, very strong. The heavenly demon Luo felt threatened by Yi Xian. It was a great threat. He could see that Yi Xian's cultivation was only at the first heavenly gate, which was a bit weaker than him. However, for some reason, Yi Xian gave him an extremely heavy pressure. "You're not Lu Bai. Who are you?" Tianma Luo asked in a deep voice. Yi Xian was wearing black, which did not match Lu Bai's image at all. "Who I am is not important. What's important is that you dared to disturb Brother Bai. Today, you're destined to die." Yi Xian spoke very calmly. However, within his calm words, there was an extremely sinister and vicious killing intent. When he found out that there was a problem with Lu Bai, and that it was a huge problem at that, Yi Xian's mood was extremely bad. When Yi Xian was in a bad mood, he was destined to be very cruel. Anyone who provoked him would not have a good ending. "You." Although Tianma Luo was a little afraid of the pressure that Yi Xian gave him, he was a prideful person. He was the successor of the heaven-devouring demonic palace and had cultivated the heaven-devouring demonic technique. Although he was not considered a top figure among the younger generation, he boasted that he was one of the top figures. Yi Xian dared to talk to him in such a way, which aroused his ferocious nature. He was determined to let Yi Xian have a taste of his power. He looked at Yi Xian as if he was looking at a dead man. "I've seen too many trash like you. Killing you will simply stain my hands. However, since you disturbed Lu Bai, I can only kill you with my own hands." Boom! His palm shook the heavens and earth, and his 5 fingers covered the sky. Yi Xian didn't waste any words. His 5 fingers covered the heavens and earth as he slapped towards the heavenly demon Luo. That vast and terrifying power even caused the heavens and earth to explode, causing the heavenly demon Luo to be even more shocked. He didn't expect Yi Xian's combat strength to be so terrifying. Heaven-devouring demonic technique. Yi Xian's attack was enough to force Tianma Luo to perform the heaven-devouring demonic technique. He could feel how terrifying Yi Xian's attack was. It was very likely that Yi Xian would severely injure him. Yi Xian was definitely a peerless enemy. Rumble. The purpose of the heaven-devouring demonic technique was to plunder. Tianma Luo performed this technique to devour Yi Xian's attack and return it to Yi Xian with the stellar transposition. Bang! Yi Xian's palm landed on Tianma Luo's head. Tianma Luo did not dodge at all because the heaven-devouring demonic technique was to absorb the power of others to nourish oneself. "You're really naive to dare to fight me with your body. Under my heaven-devouring demonic technique, you will surely turn into ashes." Tianma Luo grinned hideously. He unleashed the heaven-devouring demonic technique in an attempt to assimilate Yi Xian's attack into his body and devour Yi Xian's cultivation. However, in the next moment, Tianma Luo's face turned pale and he let out a miserable shriek. He finally realized that Yi Xian's attack did not contain any power. Instead, an extremely terrifying devouring power erupted from his palm. His flesh and blood were rapidly melting, his divine soul was cracking. Heaven-devouring demonic technique? You. How do you know the heaven-devouring demonic technique? No. No. Tianma Luo screamed miserably. If his heaven-devouring demonic technique was a stream, then Yi Xian's heaven-devouring demonic technique was a boundless sea. There was no comparison at all. He was completely crushed. Chapter 15-20. How vicious was the heaven-devouring demonic art? It wasn't just the melting of the physical body, but also the dissipation of one's soul. It was as if thousands of ants were gnawing on one's soul. This kind of endless pain was simply unimaginable to outsiders. At this moment, Tianma Luo was suffering this kind of torture, and it was 10 times more miserable. This was because Yi Xian didn't just know the heaven-devouring demonic art. The Calamity Transcender technique was even more terrifying than the heaven-devouring demonic art. The combined power of the two made Tianma Luo in a life-and-death situation. Ah! Tianma Luo's miserable shriek pierced everyone's eardrums. His body was rapidly drying up, and even his eyes began to dim. His entire body turned into a bag of bones, making him look extremely miserable. How dare a piece of trash like you challenge Lu Bai? Yi Xian stared at him coldly. His voice was cruel and vicious, and extremely brutal killing intent bloomed. He had already sentenced Tianma Luo to death in his heart. Save me, save! At this moment, Tianma Luo was wailing weakly. He was really scared. He could feel death approaching. If this continued, he would definitely die. The only person who could save him now was Sect Master Butian. Little friend, please stop. Don't kill him. Sect Master Butian frowned and hurriedly stopped Yi Xian from killing him. It wasn't that he pitied Tianma Luo, but that he was the successor of the heaven-devouring demonic palace. If he died in heaven-mending sect, he wouldn't be able to explain it to the heaven-devouring demonic palace. A supreme orthodoxy that had existed for eternity. A mere heaven-mending sect couldn't afford to offend it. Moreover, among the 10 supreme orthodoxies, the heaven-devouring demonic palace was famous for being tyrannical. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been called the Dark Age when the heaven-devouring demonic lord attained the Tao. Unfortunately, Sect Master Butian's dissuasion was useless against Yi Xian. He wouldn't give Sect Master Butian any face because Yi Xian wanted to kill someone. No one could stop him. No. It wasn't that no one could stop Yi Xian from killing people. If Lu Bai was here to dissuade him, Yi Xian would let Tianma Luo live. Unfortunately, Lu Bai was in a deep sleep, and Yi Xian was in a very bad mood. He was extremely violent and ruthless. However, the heavenly demon Luo dared to provoke him, and the person he provoked was Yi Xian's best friend. Therefore, the only outcome for Tianma Luo was death. Roar! Die! Yi Xian let out a tyrannical roar. Under the terrifying effect of the heaven-devouring demonic art and the Calamity Transcender technique, Tianma Luo let out a final miserable howl before his entire body turned into a bloody mist that filled the sky and dissipated. Only a large amount of blood energy was swallowed by Yi Xian. You! Sect leader Butian's face turned cold and his eyes were filled with fear. He didn't expect that Yi Xian would still kill Tianma Luo even after he tried to dissuade him. On the other hand, he was even more shocked by Yi Xian's cultivation and the terrifying methods Yi Xian used. Those who dare to disturb Brother Bai Yi's sleep can only die. Yi Xian was terrifyingly calm. You killed the people of these orthodoxies, and I can bear the responsibility for you. However, you killed the successor of the heaven-devouring demonic palace. The heaven-devouring demonic palace will definitely hold my sect accountable, sect leader Butian said coldly. Ha! Yi Xian sneered and slowly turned to look at sect leader Butian. When did I ask you to bear the responsibility? If they want to hold your sect accountable, you can tell them that I, Yi Xian, killed them. If they have the ability, they can come and find me for revenge. You! Unruly and arrogant, even the dignified sect leader of a great sect didn't give him the slightest bit of face. Sect leader Butian's expression became even colder. He took a deep look at Yi Xian, and in the end, could only sigh. Yi Xian, I admit that I underestimated you back then. However, you have to remember that you have just entered the undying realm. Your path has just begun. It won't be easy for you to become the strongest in history. If you continue to be so arrogant, you will die one day. Sect leader Butian said in a low voice. My life and death have nothing to do with you. Sect leader, you just need to take good care of Lu Bai. I, Yi Xian, will owe you a favor. Yi Xian said indifferently. Lu Bai is a member of my sect. Even if you didn't ask, I would take good care of him. Sect leader Butian said. Thank you, sect leader. Yi Xian cupped his hands and bowed. This bow was for Lu Bai. As for sect leader Butian, Yi Xian didn't hate him, but he didn't have a good impression of him either. Rumble. Under sect leader Butian's astonished gaze, Yi Xian formed seals with both hands. A terrifying heaven-burying divine light whizzed out along with terrifying formation runes. As Yi Xian's hands formed seals faster and faster, a grey heavenly steel appeared in the void. Boom! Although this grey heavenly steel wasn't a physical object, it was real and contained a heart-palpitating power. It took root in front of the heavenly gate. After Yi Xian finished, he turned around and said to sect leader Butian, "This steel contains my will and a great killing technique. If anyone dares to disturb Brother Bai's slumber, tell them to destroy this steel." I understand. Sect leader Butian nodded slowly. Clearly, this was a barrier set up by Yi Xian. There would always be some ants that came to challenge Lu Bai. With Yi Xian's barrier, the majority of people would be stopped. If Bai wasn't here, then he, Yi Xian, would stop any great enemies for him. Anyone who wanted to challenge Lu Bai would have to go through Yi Xian first. You want the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace? Sect leader Butian asked with a heavy voice. Correct. Yi Xian's eyes were deep and calm. Only the Lord of all spirits might be able to wake Lu Bai up, so he had to personally make a trip to the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. All right. Sect leader Butian already understood Yi Xian's temperament. Although he was worried that the Lord of all spirits would find out that Lu Bai had a chaotic spirit body, the heaven-mending sect would truly have no hope if Lu Bai continued to sleep like this. He could only take the risk. Farewell. After saying this, Yi Xian directly turned into a streak of rainbow light and disappeared into the distance. Sect leader Butian revealed an extremely complicated expression as he watched Yi Xian's departing figure. Back then, he was a mere great saint. Now, he had already stepped into the immortal realm. His cultivation and methods were all at the peak of the younger generation. Sect leader Butian was truly regretful. Why didn't he plant good karma with Yi Xian back then? If Yi Xian had joined the heaven-mending sect back then, he would have treated him well. Even without Lu Bai, perhaps Yi Xian would have grown into a pillar of the heaven-mending sect. Perhaps, he really could have become the strongest of all time in the 11th Eon. Sect leader Butian was startled. Even he himself couldn't understand why such a thought would appear in his mind. Could it be that Yi Xian really had a chance to become the strongest of all time in the next Eon? Sigh. Sect leader Butian let out a long sigh and returned to the heaven-mending sect in a slightly lonely manner. The 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace was the most revered place in the world. This was the Tao right of the Lord of all spirits. This was the ruling orthodoxy of the 10th Eon. It was a place that all primal chaos creatures had to look up to. In the 10th Eon, the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace was a supreme existence. This was because the one who had achieved Tao was here. The Lord of all spirits was also the strongest of the 10th Eon. All creatures had to look up to him with reverence. Chapter 1521. There were many palaces and jade palaces. Islands could be seen floating in the clouds from time to time. Divine generals and heavenly officials were patrolling the clouds while peerless beauties were leisurely collecting dew. Myriad Spirit Celestial Palace. The Lord of all spirits sat cross-legged in the void. The spacious celestial palace was silent. Only the light of all spirits flowed within the celestial palace. Strands of the laws of chaos flowed around the Lord of all spirits, occasionally overflowing with supreme power that caused the laws of the void to collapse and dissipate. How bold of you to sneak into the myriad spirit celestial palace. All of a sudden, the Lord of all spirits opened his eyes. Powerful rays of light erupted from them as his eyes flickered with a terrifying light. The laws of the void collapsed. His 5 fingers reached out in a certain direction as if he was trying to restrain someone. Boom! The space exploded, and the laws collapsed. This strike of the Heaven Lord of all spirits seemed casual, but it contained an utmost power. No one below the level of utmost power could dodge this strike. Yet, something strange happened. This attack didn't cause the newcomer to reveal themselves. The God of all spirits' attack actually missed. However, a figure silently appeared in front of the God of all spirits, calmly looking at him. It's you. Even though the Lord of all spirits was unfazed by the collapse of the heavens and had been a sovereign for 400 million years, he was still shocked to see this person. He no longer had his previous composure. Yi Ling Tian, to think that you're a sovereign of all ages. Over 10 million years have passed, but your cultivation doesn't seem to have improved much. Once the next eon begins, you'll lose all your advantages. Yi Xian was dressed in black with 3,000 strands of black hair scattered behind his head. Even when facing the Lord of all spirits, he treated him with an equal tone. So you're still alive. After his initial shock, the Lord of all spirits quickly calmed down, but his eyes were filled with curiosity as he looked at Yi Xian. In the Battle of the Sovereigns, he had personally witnessed Yi Xian kill the Lord of Extreme Demons. This had given him a great shock. Although Yi Xian had been exhausted and killed by the undying Heaven Lord, turning into a skeleton and vanishing, the Lord of all spirits had a strong feeling that Yi Xian would not die so easily. The reason was simple. Back then, he had fought the future self. Although he had not yet become a sovereign of all ages and had lost to the future self, how could someone with such a terrifying illusory future die so easily? Moreover, after witnessing the death of the Lord of Extreme Demons, the Lord of all spirits still felt some apprehension towards Yi Xian. Although he guessed that Yi Xian's technique had great limitations, Yi Xian had still left an indelible impression on him. Calm. After all, in the Lord of all spirits' heart, he had always regarded Yi Xian as someone on the same level. Naturally, he would not feel that Yi Xian was being disrespectful towards him because of Yi Xian's actions. If it had been anyone else who dared to sit beside the Lord of all spirits so casually, they would definitely have died. Yi Ling Tian, although you are a sovereign of all ages in the 10th period and have the support of the heavenly heart of chaos, even the Lord of Chaos can't do anything to you. But after the 10th period, who do you think you can match up to among the 10 sovereigns? Let's not talk about the chaotic destiny dimension. You are not even a match for the undying Heaven Lord and the sky-devouring Demon Lord. As for the Lord of Destruction, you should be slightly weaker. At most, you can only be on par with the Lord of Extreme Love. Don't even talk about the Forbidden Realm, Yi Xian said sarcastically. Boom! As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, the Lord of all spirits shook. A terrifying sovereign power overflowed, but it did not oppress Yi Xian. Instead, he stared coldly at Yi Xian and said, Yi Xian, provoking me is useless. Don't forget the deal we made. If it wasn't for our deal, do you think you would still be alive to talk to me? Ha ha ha. Yi Xian laughed, but his laughter was still sarcastic. He said, of course I didn't forget our deal. I also promised to help you open that door. But your cultivation is at the bottom among the sovereigns. When the 10th period is over, what do you have to compete with the other sovereigns? The more Yi Xian said, the gloomier the Lord of all spirits' face became because he could not refute Yi Xian. What Yi Xian said was indeed the truth. Which of the other sovereigns was weaker than him? It was just that he was the sovereign of the 10th period. With the chaotic heavenly core and the chaotic will, he was not afraid of any other sovereigns. But after the 10th period, he could only remain silent. This was something that could not be avoided. Therefore, he was also nurturing a disciple to compete for the next period. Yi Xian, let's not talk nonsense. You must have a purpose for coming to see me. Just be straightforward. As a sovereign, the Lord of all spirits was not stupid. He directly exposed Yi Xian's purpose. He did not want to argue with Yi Xian too much. Yi Xian did not hide anything. He looked at the Lord of all Spirits with a serious expression and said, "I want you to help me save someone." Save someone? The Lord of all Spirits was stunned. Then, a mocking smile appeared on his face. He looked at Yi Xian and said, "I know you more or less. Killing is your true nature. You don't trust anyone, and you don't have any so-called friends. Who would ask you to save? And you actually risked your life to beg me to save this person. This is extremely rare. Save or not save?" Yi Xian's face was slightly cold. He did not waste any words. "Who do you think you are? Why should I help you? Why should I save him?" The Lord of all Spirits sneered. "Why should I?" Yi Xian slowly got up. He looked at the Lord of all Spirits with a slightly malicious gaze and said, "Because your cultivation is at the bottom of the sovereigns. Because the 10th period has passed, you can't compete with the other sovereigns. Only I can help you. You help me." The Lord of all Spirits sneered and said, "You think you have the right to help me just because you survived and stepped into the immortal realm? Everyone below the sovereigns are ants. You're still far from that. If I give you the secrets of the demonic heaven-gorging art, do you think I'll be able to help you?" In the next moment, Yi Xian calmly spoke. However, in the ears of the Lord of all Spirits, it was like a bolt of lightning exploding in his mind. His originally mocking expression stiffened slightly. If one were to ask who cultivated the fastest in the Chaos verse, it would undoubtedly be the Lord of Heaven-gorging. His demonic heaven-gorging art could devour all things and was an extremely domineering technique. Although the Lord of all Spirits' heavenly scripture of all spirits wasn't bad either, it was still inferior to the demonic heaven-gorging art in terms of cultivation. When Yi Xian mentioned the secrets of the demonic heaven-gorging art, how could the Lord of all Spirits not be tempted? The demonic heaven-gorging art. The secrets of the demonic heaven-gorging art. Although there was only a difference of 2 words, the difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. Chapter 1522. Many people in the heaven-devouring demon palace had learned the heaven-devouring demonic art, but it was only a part of it. The real core was the mysteries of the heaven-devouring demonic art. The heaven-devouring demon lord had never passed down the profundities of the heaven-devouring demon art to anyone. Yi Xian was the only exception, even though this profundities had been secretly altered by the heaven-devouring demon lord. However, Yi Xian also had the tribulation transcender technique. He had only borrowed the mysteries of the heaven-devouring demonic art and combined them with the tribulation transcender technique to make it his own. Therefore, Yi Xian was the second person to have the mysteries of the heaven-devouring demonic art. The Lord of all Spirits was silent. He believed Yi Xian's words and also believed that Yi Xian had the mysteries of the heaven-devouring demonic art because he had seen Yi Xian use it before. If he could obtain the mysteries of the heaven-devouring demonic art and combine them with the 10,000 spirits immortal scripture he had created, there would indeed be a qualitative change, and his cultivation would also increase by a terrifying amount. However, the Lord of all Spirits also knew that Yi Xian would not be so kind. The person he wanted to save must not be simple. Otherwise, Yi Xian would not have given such a big gift. Who do you want to save? The Lord of all Spirits' eyes were deep. Lu Bai. Yi Xian's answer was brief and powerful. So it's him. The Lord of all Spirits nodded. He had seen Lu Bai's grace before. He was indeed a genius. Even when Yi Xian encountered a strong killing intent, he had still come to help without hesitation. Here. Yi Xian threw out a black jade slip. It was the mysteries of the heaven-devouring demonic art that he had exchanged with the heaven-devouring demon master. At this moment, Yi Xian had given it to the Lord of all Spirits. The Lord of all Spirits took the jade slip in his hand and simply glanced at it before solemnly putting it away. With his cultivation, he could tell whether it was real or fake at a glance. However, the Lord of all spirits did not notice that Yi Xian's eyes quietly flashed with a strange light before returning to normal in the next moment. This jade slip indeed contained the mysteries of the heaven-devouring demonic art, but it had been secretly altered by the heaven-devouring demon master. Just this slight change would leave behind hidden dangers that could not be discovered. Yi Xian had the tribulation transcender technique, so he could easily discover this hidden danger. At this moment, he had given the mysteries of the heaven-devouring demonic art to the Lord of all spirits in exchange for saving Lu Bai. In fact, he harnessed his heaven-devouring demonic art was as a condition for saving Lu Bai. Yi Xian understood this principle. Yi Xian was Tao, and Yi was knew this truth. Xian, God. Xian heaven was devouring spirit God. As the saying goes, one has to be on guard against others, but Yi Xian has to have the heart to harm others. This is because his path is too difficult, and there are dangers everywhere. He has to bury his chess pieces step by step, and there will be a day when he uses them in of heaven divine Tao. Yi Xian did not speak any nonsense. Using the heaven-smiting transformation, he disappeared from the myriad spirit heavenly palace. It could be said that he came and went without a trace. Looking at Yi Xian's disappearance, the Lord of all spirits' originally calm expression gradually became heavy. Occasionally, a cold murderous intent flashed in his eyes, mixed with a bit of dread. Yi Xian. I don't know where he learned such a terrifying secret technique. Even I can't catch his aura. No wonder he dared to appear in front of me. It seems he can use this secret technique to save his life, the Lord of all spirits said solemnly. The myriad spirit heavenly palace was the ruler of the world. The entire myriad spirit heavenly palace could be said to be impregnable. There were many immortal realm experts among them, and there were even several third-stage immortal realm experts. However, no one had discovered Yi Xian's arrival. It was only when Yi Xian appeared in his residence that he sensed Yi Xian's arrival. However, he still failed to capture Yi Xian. Just this ability alone caused the Lord of all spirits to have complicated feelings. He knew that Yi Xian had truly grown up. The fact that he was able to appear in the great central region proved that he wasn't afraid of the strongest threat from the ancient times. Of the 10 supreme existences, perhaps only the primal chaos and destiny spacetime could pose a threat to him and truly suppress him. However, this was only the Lord of all spirits' guess. If even the 3 supreme existences were unable to do so, then only that forbidden figure who had emerged from the river of time had the ability to do so. This person is far too mysterious. He's also a double-edged blade. If I use him well, he can open up a path for me, but if I don't use him, I'll end up hurting myself, the Lord of all spirits murmured. The Lord of all spirits muttered as his eyes flickered. He was thinking about everything about Yi Xian. The heaven-smiting transformation, the primal chaos vanishing without a trace. The heaven-smiting transformation was an evasion technique that could also be called a forbidden evasion technique. Not even the supreme existences of the ancient era could capture it. It transcended the primal chaos and was not present in the world. This was the heaven-smiting transformation, and also the reason why Yi Xian dared to face the supreme existences of the ancient era. However, the heaven-smiting transformation was not just an evasion technique. Yi Xian had only just started cultivating it and grasped it. The heaven-smiting transformation had even more terrifying uses, but Yi Xian had yet to fully comprehend them. The heaven-smiting transformation. It was all about the word change. The word change was very profound. It wasn't something that could be grasped through secluded meditation. Instead, it required experience. Perhaps at a certain point in time, or perhaps at a certain person or event, he would truly comprehend the profound mysteries of the word change. Rip. Without a trace in the world, Yi Xian traversed through space. With the power of time and space, as well as the mysteries of the heaven-smiting transformation, his speed could definitely be described as extremely fast in the primal chaos. Very few people in the immortal realm could compare with him. After leaving the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace, Yi Xian didn't waste any time. He directly landed on the summit of a nameless mountain and laid down a heaven-sealing great formation. Then, he began to use a secret technique to condense 2 jade talismans. As Yi Xian threw out the talismans, the 2 jade talismans disappeared into the void. It was unknown who Yi Xian was sending a message to. After doing all this, Yi Xian dispersed the heaven-sealing great formation and soared into the sky. He directly headed in the direction of the heaven-mending sect. He had already done everything he could. Whether or not he could save Lu Bai depended on this moment. Heaven-mending sect. Yi Xian left quickly and returned quickly. With the heaven-smiting transformation's forbidden evasion technique, he quietly appeared in the heaven palace. On the black jade platform, Lu Bai was still sleeping. "Who is it?" Boom! A panicked shout rang out. Sect Master Butian instantly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He raised his hand and was about to attack, but when he saw Yi Xian clearly, he hurriedly withdrew the great technique he was about to unleash. "Did you inform me when you returned? If I hadn't stopped in time, you wouldn't have died at my hands." Sect Master Butian's face was filled with dissatisfaction. He had thought that a great enemy had arrived and had almost killed Yi Xian just then. "You still can't kill me. Moreover, Sect Master's cultivation is at the Tongtian level. You can already control it as you wish, so why should I be worried?" Yi Xian said indifferently. However, his eyes remained fixed on Lu Bai. Sect Master Butian understood Yi Xian's nature, so he couldn't be bothered to bicker with Yi Xian. He also immediately realized that Yi Xian had left to seek help from the Lord of all Spirits. Now that he had returned, it was clear that he had already met the Lord of all Spirits. Chapter 1523. Is the Lord of all Spirits willing to help? Sect Master Butian probed carefully. After all, Lu Bai was related to the future of the sect, so he naturally did not want anything to happen to him. "In 100 years, Yi Lingtian will come," Yi Xian replied simply. Sect Master Butian let out a sigh of relief when he heard Yi Xian's reply. However, he was startled in the next moment. He stared at Yi Xian in shock and doubt. Only now did he remember who the Lord of all Spirits was. He was one of the most powerful existences in the world, yet Yi Xian had managed to invite him over in such a short amount of time. This terrified Sect Master Butian. Moreover, Yi Xian had actually called the Lord of all Spirits by his name. This was extremely disrespectful, but Yi Xian's calm demeanor made it clear that he did not do it on purpose. This left Sect Master Butian speechless. He began to wonder what the relationship between Yi Xian and the Lord of all Spirits was. While Sect Master Butian's mind was in a mess, Yi Xian's voice rang out. "I want to stay with Brother Bai for a while. Please do not disturb us." As Yi Xian's words entered his ears, Sect Master Butian immediately returned to his senses. He felt extremely conflicted inside. It was as if this place had become Yi Xian's home and he had become an outsider. However, he also knew that Yi Xian and Lu Bai were close friends, so he slowly nodded and left the heavenly palace. The heavenly palace was empty and deathly silent. Only Lu Bai was sleeping peacefully. If it were not for the fact that there was still life on his body, anyone would treat him as a dead person. No one would believe that he was still alive. "Brother Bai, what's wrong with you?" After a long while, Yi Xian softly asked. Even after using his law eye of destruction, he still could not see what was wrong with Lu Bai. Moreover, Yi Xian could feel that although Lu Bai was sleeping, his breathing was getting weaker and weaker. Even his heartbeat was slowing down. Although there was still life in him, it was obscure. However, the strange thing was that although Lu Bai was in a deep sleep, his cultivation was still increasing. The seventh gate of heaven was faintly visible, and there were signs that the eighth gate of heaven was about to open. It was a good thing that Lu Bai's cultivation had increased, but the changes in his body worried Yi Xian. Lu Bai's life force was fluctuating, and Yi Xian could not even sense the aura of his soul. "Brother White Robe, I will definitely save you." Yi Xian's eyes were terrifyingly deep. An extremely oppressive atmosphere appeared around him, mixed with an extremely tyrannical aura. In fact, ever since Yi Xian discovered that something had happened to Lu Bai, he had been feeling anxious and extremely violent emotions had accumulated in his heart. However, he had calmly suppressed them. This was because Yi Xian knew that he had to remain calm. If he could not control his emotions, not only would he not be able to help Lu Bai, but he would also cause problems for himself. Yi Xian admitted that he was an ordinary man. He would never waste his breath on things that could be solved with violence. However, violence would not solve anything in the case of Lu Bai. Wait. Now, Yi Xian could only wait. 100 years later, the Lord of all spirits would come and save Lu Bai. Perhaps some people would ask why he had to wait 100 years. The reason was simple. This was because Yi Xian wanted to make sure that nothing went wrong. Although the Lord of all spirits was a contemporary Tao enlightened master and had the support of the heavenly heart of chaos, which should logically be able to awaken Lu Bai, Yi Xian was still not at ease. Therefore, he found two more people. The two jade slips he sent out were the people he wanted to invite. This process would take at least 100 years. 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. Time passed quickly, and beauties aged quickly. Although this sentence was applicable to mortals, to Yi Xian, the 100 years of waiting and suffering seemed to have passed as long as a yuan. 100 years later. On this day, the heaven-mending sect activated the heaven-sealing great formation and refused all visitors. Even the immortal realm experts who had been in seclusion for a long time began to patrol the world. Under the decree of the heaven-mending sect master, all the sect disciples were not allowed to wander around. All of them stayed in their own seclusion grounds to cultivate. No matter what happened in the outside world, they were not allowed to leave their own grounds. No one knew what had happened. However, the heaven-mending sect was very quiet on this day. It was so quiet that the sect disciples felt uneasy. In front of the heaven palace. The palace gates were wide open. Yi Xian and the heaven-mending sect master stood side by side. This was because today was the day that Yi Xian and the Lord of all spirits had agreed to meet. As expected, Yi Xian and the heaven-mending sect master did not have to wait for long. A majestic figure seemed to have crossed the endless barrier and silently appeared before Yi Xian. It was the current enlightened Lord of all spirits. Greetings, Heaven Lord. The arrival of the Lord of all spirits was silent and did not carry any supreme might. However, the heaven-mending sect master was terrified and reverent. He hurriedly bowed 3 times towards the Lord of all spirits. The enlightened Lord of the current era, the ruler of the 10th Yuan Hui, the most powerful throughout the ages. These titles added together were enough to make the heaven-mending sect master tremble both physically and mentally. He was extremely respectful towards the Lord of all spirits, so he did not dare to lose his composure in the slightest. This was because the heaven-mending sect master understood one principle: all below the most powerful existences were ants. If someone wanted to kill him, they would not hesitate at all. This was the terror of the most powerful existences throughout the ages. He was completely powerless against them. You are indeed punctual. Yi Xian did not bow towards the Lord of all spirits. He only nodded slightly. This was not Yi Xian being arrogant, it was only because he had made a deal with the Lord of all spirits. Moreover, even without this deal, Yi Xian did not need to fear the so-called most powerful existences because he believed that one day, he would catch up to the Lord of all spirits and even surpass him. The Lord of all spirits had long since become accustomed to Yi Xian's attitude, so he naturally did not say anything. The most awkward person was the heaven-mending sect master because the Lord of all spirits did not even glance at him. This made him feel so awkward that he did not know what to do. The person you want to save is here, right? Take me to take a look. The Lord of all spirits flatly said. No rush, there are still some old friends who have not arrived. Once they arrive, we can go together. Yi Xian calmly said. Old friends? The Lord of all spirits frowned after hearing Yi Xian's words. The heaven-mending sect master was also startled. The Lord of all spirits had already arrived, so who was Yi Xian waiting for? Just as the two of them were puzzled, the world silently changed. Spacetime became chaotic as nine-colored divine light appeared. Two figures walked over from the north and south, appearing before the Lord of all spirits in just a few seconds. Spacetime. Extreme emotion. The Lord of all spirits' expression changed when he saw the two people before him. Only now did he realize that apart from him, Yi Xian had actually invited these two supreme existences as well. However, the Lord of all spirits calmed down a moment later. He should have known that the Spacetime Master and Extreme Emotion Master had an extraordinary relationship with Yi Xian, so it was only natural that they would be invited. Greetings, Supreme Existences. Beads of sweat appeared on the heaven-mending sect master's forehead, and his face became rather pale. No matter what, he was still a peak figure in the central region, but after seeing the three supreme existences gathered here, he was extremely shocked. He felt even more fear towards Yi Xian. Three supreme existences. This was definitely not just empty words. Throughout the entire Chaos Verse, only a handful of people could invite three supreme existences. This was simply unimaginable to the heaven-mending sect master, and it also proved that Yi Xian was definitely not simple. Chapter 1524. Sir. The Master of Extreme Love was a female supreme expert. Her name was Yi Qingmei, a woman of extreme love, a woman who had waited for Yi Xian for 3 yuan hui. 10 million years was not a long time for Yi Qingmei, but the torment of waiting made her look much more haggard. She did not know whether Yi Xian was alive or dead, but she believed that Yi Xian was definitely still alive. This moment was the best proof. She forcefully suppressed her emotions, not wanting to cry. She was a supreme expert of all time, no longer the little girl of the past. Thousands of words were in her eyes. Time passed quickly, and eternity passed in an instant. Although Yi Qingmei only spat out 2 simple words, when she met Yi Xian's eyes, everything was understood without words. It's good that you're alive. The Master of Spacetime smiled and nodded at Yi Xian. If there were people in this world who understood Yi Xian somewhat, the Master of Spacetime would definitely be one of them. This was because he had interacted with Yi Xian's future too many times. Although this was only an illusory part of Yi Xian's future, their relationship was definitely not ordinary. To the side, Sect Master Bu Tian remained silent. This was because there was no chance for him to speak, and he did not have the qualifications to do so. It was also from this moment on that Sect Master Bu Tian completely changed his view of Yi Xian. He directly listed him as one of the people who could not be offended. Today, I invited the 3 of you here only to save a good friend of mine. I'll have to trouble the 3 of you. Yi Xian bowed. This bow was for Lu Bai because Lu Bai's position in his heart was far too important. Little friend, there's no need to say anything more. The Master of Spacetime waved his hand. To be able to make Yi Xian owe him a favor was a good thing for him. In the future, this favor would be extremely important to the Master of Spacetime. Please. Yi Xian took the lead and walked into the heavenly palace. The 3 supreme experts slowly followed behind. Sect Master Bu Tian was very cautious, so much so that there was almost no sound of footsteps accompanying him. He was also extremely nervous. Inside the heavenly palace. The black jade stone platform was dark and deep, and Lu Bai was peacefully sleeping. However, the occasional ripples of aura and the reflection of the 7 heavenly gates stunned the 3 supreme beings on the spot. 7 heavenly gates. The Lord of all spirits exclaimed in shock. His originally calm expression became one of shock. Even the Lord of Time and Space and Yi Qingmei were shocked. The 3 supreme experts were not shocked by Lu Bai's cultivation, but because they had seen Lu Bai before. At that time, Lu Bai was only at the Yin-Yang realm. In such a short period of time, Lu Bai had actually opened 7 gates of heaven. This was simply unimaginable and inconceivable. Among the younger generation, even the strongest expert was only at the 2nd stage of the immortal realm. Moreover, the amount of time they spent cultivating was definitely dozens of times longer than Lu Bai. Wine. In the next moment, the Lord of all spirits stretched out his palm and pressed it directly on Lu Bai's head. However, after only a dozen breaths, his face instantly turned gloomy and terrifying, and even his entire body erupted with terrifying killing intent. Primal, chaotic, spirit, body. The Lord of all spirits spoke with a pause between each word. The killing intent that erupted from his body distorted the surrounding void. The power of all spirits overflowed uncontrollably, as if it would kill Lu Bai on the spot in the next moment. At this critical moment, Yi Xian's gloomy voice rang out. "What are you trying to do?" When Yi Xian's voice rang out, the Lord of all spirits suddenly came to his senses. He turned around and looked at Yi Xian and Sect Master Butian. "No wonder you wanted to save him. It turns out that he is the legendary chaotic spirit body. He must die today." The Lord of all spirits' killing intent soared to the sky. He was not just saying it. He really wanted to kill Lu Bai, because the chaotic spirit body was destined to become the supreme expert of all ages. This was without a doubt. If he did not kill Lu Bai today, his disciple would not have the chance to become the supreme expert of the next Yuan Hui. The Lord of all spirits would never allow such a thing to happen. Not to mention the Lord of all spirits' killing intent, even the Lord of Time and Space's expression was somewhat gloomy. He also did not expect to see the legendary chaotic spirit body. How could his disciple compete with the chaotic spirit body? There was no need to mention the Lord of extreme emotions. She had been on Yi Xian's side from the beginning to the end, and her powerful aura exploded out. As long as the two of them dared to make a move against Lu Bai, she would definitely stop them. If you kill him, the karma will be formed. There will be no need for the next Yuan Hui. In the 10th Yuan Hui, you and I will fight to the death. Yi Xian said calmly. His voice paused for a moment before he continued, "Moreover, I can guarantee you that I will kill you, just like how I killed the Lord of the Extreme Demon back then." Boom! The light of all spirits, the wrath of the Extreme Demon, erupted with an extremely terrifying might. What kind of character was the Lord of all spirits? He was the supreme expert of all ages, and he was also the one who had achieved the Tao in the current era. At this moment, Yi Xian's threat was not just disrespectful to him, but a challenge to his dignity as the ruler of the 10th Yuan Hui. "You can try if you don't believe me." Rumble. Yi Xian's entire body disappeared without a trace. Only his terrifyingly calm voice reverberated in the heavenly palace. What was even more frightening was that the space around him was gradually shattering. Even the mysteries of the heavens seemed to be receding. "You." The Lord of all spirits' expression was as gloomy as water. He really couldn't find any trace of Yi Xian. Moreover, the fate of the Lord of the Extreme Demon back then flashed across his mind, causing his expression to fluctuate. The supreme experts of all ages were also humans, just that they were the strongest humans. As long as they were humans, they would have their own thoughts. The Lord of all spirits was able to become the supreme expert of all ages, so he definitely wasn't afraid of being threatened. Otherwise, he wouldn't have cultivated to the supreme realm. He was just weighing the pros and cons of this situation. Killing Lu Bai would create a life and death feud with Yi Xian, not to mention opening the door in the depths of the primal chaos in the future. Moreover, this was only the 10th Yuan Hui. The next Yuan Hui had yet to arrive. Even if Lu Bai became the supreme expert of all ages in the 11th Yuan Hui, there would still be a seat for the supreme expert of the 12th Yuan Hui. After weighing the pros and cons, the Lord of all Spirits' killing intent dissipated and he fell silent once more. Meanwhile, Yi Xian dispersed the heavenly tribulation transformation and reappeared in the heavenly palace. Yi Xian, this Lord will give you face, but this Lord hopes that you understand that this Lord didn't kill him not because of your threat, but because of our deal. I want you to fulfill your promise in the future, the Lord of all Spirits said in a low voice. Of course. Yi Xian calmly replied, then turned to the Lord of Spacetime. Although the two of them had interacted many times, how could Yi Xian not sense the killing intent that had just seeped out of the Lord of Spacetime? Young friend, you worry too much. The Lord of Spacetime's killing intent had long since dissipated. He was able to make the choice between killing Lu Bai and Yi Xian very clearly. However, he also sighed in his heart. The disciple he had painstakingly nurtured would probably not be able to reach the Tao in the next Yuan Hui. Not to mention Lu Bai's chaotic spiritual body, even Yi Xian was currently an obstacle. Chapter 1525. However, the strongest of all time only cared about themselves, and even their personal disciples were merely tools to be used. Once he understood this, the Lord of Time and Space no longer felt conflicted. I'll have to trouble the three of you. Yi Xian said with a solemn expression. I'll take a look at what's wrong with him. Rumble. At this moment, the body of the Lord of all Spirits glowed. This was a boundless and majestic light that contained the might of the chaos. He was a Tao enlightened one, and his entire being was in harmony with the universe of the 10th Yuan Hui. His body was immeasurably powerful. The Lord of all Spirits reached into the void, and his powerful magic power surged into Lu Bai's body as he began to check on his condition. But in the next moment, an extremely strange and shocking thing happened. A strange whirlwind blew in the heavenly palace, and a wisp of death energy suddenly erupted from Lu Bai's body, forcing the Lord of all Spirits' great magic power back. The strange whirlwind and the death energy tangled together, and wherever it passed, everything was annihilated, as if it wanted to destroy everything. Freeze! The Lord of all Spirits' expression changed drastically. He slammed out with supreme laws, causing terrifying laws to erupt from his body. The light of all spirits surged out, suppressing the deathly aura and the eerie whirlwind, causing them to gradually dissipate in the void. What's going on? Yi Xian saw this scene with his own eyes, and his seemingly calm appearance instantly became fierce and tense. Forbidden. He has a forbidden. The Lord of all Spirits stuttered. If he had been shocked that Lu Bai was the legendary chaotic spirit body, then he was truly shocked to the extreme. This was because the wisp of death energy that erupted from Lu Bai just now was the so-called forbidden power. This power had appeared on ancient shadow before, and it was the most obvious sign of a forbidden figure. How could the Lord of all Spirits not be shocked to the extreme? The Lord of all Spirits knew very well how terrifying a forbidden figure was. Back then, the 10 greatest masters and the 9 great star masters were at a disadvantage even when they joined forces, and they were almost killed by ancient shadow. The terror of a forbidden figure was deeply rooted in the Lord of all Spirits' heart. Not only the Lord of all Spirits, but the Lord of Time and Space and Yi Qingmei also had grave expressions. Forbidden. Yi Xian blankly stared at the sleeping Lu Bai. His entire mind was in chaos. How could he not see that wisp of death aura from before? It was so familiar that he couldn't be any more familiar with it. Back then, the eternal shadow had given him 2 great forbidden techniques, and he had sensed the presence of this deathly aura on the other party's body. No, it couldn't be called death aura. It should be called taboo power. This was also the unique symbol of taboo characters. Why? why does he have taboo energy? Yi Xian looked at the three utmost powerful beings abruptly. This was because he could not understand something like this. Perhaps only the three utmost powerful beings could give him an answer. Unfortunately, Yi Xian could see confusion and shock in the eyes of the three supreme beings. Even the three supreme beings did not understand why Lu Bai's body would emit forbidden energy. Perhaps a taboo figure planted a taboo power in him, the Spacetime Master said in a low voice. There's another possibility. Yi Qingmei hesitated. What possibility? Yi Xian quickly asked. Looking at Lu Bai's sleeping face, Yi Qingmei's eyes were heavy as she said, He might be the reincarnation of a taboo figure. Moreover, even though he's sleeping, his cultivation is increasing rapidly. Impossible! Yi Xian suddenly roared. He could not accept this fact at all. He did not believe that Lu Bai was the reincarnation of a taboo figure. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Back then, he died when he was still immortal. It was I who used the power of time and space to go back to that period of time and found his soul fragments. That was how I was able to bring him back to life. If he was the reincarnation of a forbidden figure, how could he die? Yi Xian roared savagely. He could not control his emotions at all. The god of all spirits frowned slightly, then slowly nodded and said, Yi Xian is right. The chances of him being the reincarnation of a taboo figure are very small. Although we have not stepped into the taboo realm and do not know how to do so, taboo figures should be immortal and indestructible. How could they be reincarnated? Hearing the god of all spirits' words, the Spacetime Master and Yi Qingmei slowly nodded. Clearly, they agreed with the god of all spirits' words. The shadow of eternity was the best proof. Even the shadow of eternity could escape from the chaos heavenly punishment. Who in the chaotic universe could threaten a taboo figure? The chances of a taboo figure being reincarnated were very, very small, and there was no need to do so. Then there's only one possibility now, and that is that he has a chaotic spirit body. A taboo figure planted some sort of taboo on him, which is why he's sleeping. Moreover, his cultivation has been increasing at a terrifying rate. However, we don't know if this development is good or bad, Yi Qingmei said in a low voice. I don't care about any taboo figure. Right now, I just want him to wake up. Right now, his vitality is fluctuating, and even his breathing and heartbeat are extremely slow. He'll be in big trouble. I didn't ask you to come here to listen to your nonsense. I want you to help me save him. Yi Xian completely lost control of his emotions. His voice was roaring, and his face was distorted. The taboo power is unfathomable. It nurtures a great terror. Even we don't dare to touch it lightly. I've done my best. Although the god of all spirits did not want to admit his failure, he really had no other choice. Just now, he had used the heavenly heart of chaos to strengthen himself. It contained the law of chaos, and he had even used his own supreme strength. However, he was still forced to retreat by the taboo power. If he had used force, he might not have been able to save Lu Bai. He might have accidentally killed Lu Bai, or even caused the taboo power to backfire on him. Even the god of all spirits had failed. The other two supreme beings also frowned. Logically speaking, the cultivation of time and extreme emotion was stronger than that of the god of all spirits. However, this was only in terms of cultivation. In truth, the god of all spirits was the one who had achieved Tao. He himself had the support of the heavenly heart of chaos. If even he could not do anything, even if the other two supreme beings tried, the result would be the same. I have to save him. Looking at the three supreme beings who were silent, Yi Xian roared again and again. His emotions were about to explode. I'll give it a try. Yi Qingmei's expression was cold. She did not care about the taboo power. She only cared about Yi Xian. Even if she encountered a disaster, she did not regret it. Boom! The power of extreme emotion burst out and entered Lu Bai's body through a gentle method. However, the same thing happened again. The taboo power appeared again. This time, it was even more terrifying. It surged wildly toward Yi Qingmei. Even Lu Bai's body was trembling. His sleeping face showed some pain. Boom! At the same time, the three supreme beings joined forces and finally annihilated the taboo power. However, they were so shocked that they broke out in cold sweat. We can't touch him anymore. Otherwise, he'll really die. The god of time and space said coldly. Lu Bai's aura was even weaker than before. At this moment, his body was surrounded by a deathly light, which was the so-called taboo power. His sleeping face showed some pain, as if he was experiencing some kind of nightmare. Chapter 15:26. How could this be? How could this be? Yi Xian's entire being had gone completely berserk. He kept pacing around the sky palace, and strands of extremely tyrannical aura permeated the air. He was already at risk of going mad. Sir, please calm down. Seeing that Yi Xian was about to lose control, Yi Qingmei worriedly tried to dissuade him. Unfortunately, her words had no effect on Yi Xian. Only Lu Bai could cause him to lose control of his emotions. Suddenly, Yi Xian looked at the space-time master, and hope bloomed in his eyes once more. Heavenly Lord, as the Lord of time and space, you can even control the river of time and control the laws of time. Right now, only you can help me. Consider it as me begging you, help me this time. I, Yi Xian, will never forget this kindness. I will definitely repay it tenfold in the future. At this moment, Yi Xian's posture was extremely humble. He had never begged anyone so humbly before, but for Lu Bai, he really lowered his proud head this time and gave up his so-called self-respect. The space-time master's expression was complicated. He looked at Yi Xian with a trace of shock in his eyes. Yi Xian's humble pleading made his heart tremble violently. In the space-time master's mind, Yi Xian was a very proud person. Even the strongest of all time might not be taken seriously by him. During the time he spent with the future self, the space-time master knew that Yi Xian was a person who never bowed his head. But now, for the sake of this person who was unconscious, he had put down his pride and dignity. He had finally made a decision in his heart. This was also considered repaying the favor of the future self for nurturing him. Very well. The space-time master spat out this simple word, which also made Yi Xian bow. Time. Rumble. Time surged and waves surged. The space-time master was channeling the river of time. The surging turbid water appeared and directly suppressed the entire sky palace. The power of time and space filled the sky and earth, and even the space between heaven and earth began to shatter. Of the three great rivers, the river of time pierced through space and time. It contained such great power that even the space-time lord could not truly understand its profundities. This time, only the power of the river of time might be able to save Lu Bai and eliminate the forbidden power in his body, but it would consume a great deal of the space-time master's energy. Time is merciless. The long river surged, and heaven and earth froze. The turbid river of time was hanging upside down. This was not real river water, but the power of time. Under the terrifying control of the master of time, the vast power of time poured into Lu Bai's body. Rumble. The next moment, Lu Bai's 7 celestial gates appeared and rotated above him. Terrifying forbidden power burst out from his body and instantly intertwined with the power of time. Boom! 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 The space exploded, and everything was destroyed. Even the space where Yi Xian and the others were was turned into nothingness. The river of time was exerting its terrifying power, constantly suppressing the forbidden power in Lu Bai's body. The terrifying power that erupted was simply shocking. One was the legendary forbidden power, and the other was the eternal river of time. When these two powers intertwined, no one knew who would be able to suppress the other. Destroy. The space-time master's body glowed. This was the terrifying light of time. Not only did he use the river of time, but he also used all of his cultivation. However, his arms were trembling slightly, and his face began to turn a little pale. He was in a weakened state. Terrifying, too terrifying, terrifying to the extreme. Although the space-time master could mobilize the river of time for his own use, the power required to mobilize the river of time was simply unimaginable. Even though he was the strongest of all time, this kind of consumption was somewhat unbearable for him. However, something exciting also happened. The forbidden power around Lu Bai's body was gradually being destroyed, and the power of time poured into his body, constantly suppressing and destroying the drifting power of time in his body. Time passed little by little, and the space-time master's face became paler and paler. His entire body was extremely weak, and Yi Xian stared at the unconscious Lu Bai. His fists were tightly clenched, and his fingernails dug into his palms, but he didn't realize it. Boom! Finally, there was a loud noise, and the river of time suddenly disappeared. The space-time master's body staggered back, and the world returned to normal. It was also at this moment that the unconscious Lu Bai's eyelids twitched slightly. When he slowly opened his eyes, they were dull and lifeless, as if he had fallen into an indescribable state. Lu Bai. Yi Xian instantly came to Lu Bai's side and called out his name loudly. At this moment, Lu Bai's dull and lifeless eyes gradually focused, and Yi Xian's anxious face gradually appeared in his eyes. Brother. Brother Yi. Lu Bai's voice was very weak, almost inaudible, but Yi Xian heard it clearly. This made him overjoyed, and he wanted to help Lu Bai up. However, before Yi Xian could do anything, Lu Bai stretched out his hand with difficulty to stop Yi Xian from going forward, and said, Brother. Brother Yi. I don't have much time. Listen to me, Brother Bai, I've already found. Yi Xian said anxiously, but he was once again interrupted by Lu Bai. Yi. Listen, to, me. 12 void shattering. Cauldron. Reincarnation. Halberd. Key. Primal chaos. Reincarnation. Don't open. Boom. In the next moment, an extremely terrifying death ray suddenly erupted from Lu Bai's body, directly sending Yi Xian flying. However, the strange thing was that Yi Xian actually did not suffer any injuries. However, Lu Bai actually fell into a deep sleep again, and this time, a mysterious symbol appeared on his forehead, accompanied by a forbidden power. Not to mention Yi Xian, even the strongest of all time could not get close to him. Why is it like this? Why is it like this? Yi Xian was stunned for a moment, then suddenly rushed to the space-time master, and rudely grabbed the space-time master's shoulder and shook it violently, crazily questioning him why it had become like this. The space-time master's face was pale. He slowly pushed Yi Xian away, and said with a heavy expression, even the strongest of us can't touch the forbidden power. Although the river of time can wake him up in a short period of time, it can only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. The forbidden power hidden deep in his body cannot be removed, unless I can truly control the river of time. Only then can I save him. But I sigh. In the end, the space-time lord could only sigh helplessly. He was only capable of controlling the river of time. Controlling the river of time was simply a fantasy. This was because the everlasting hatred of time had existed since the beginning of time. In the current 12 periods of time, it was highly likely that the river of time had already existed in the previous universe. Chapter 1527. It wasn't a possibility. It was a certainty. No one knew the origins of the three great rivers. Even in the first Yuanhui, when the Master of Chaos had yet to attain Tao, the three great rivers had already existed in the chaotic universe. He was dazed and speechless. These simple words explained Yi Xian's current state. He stumbled his way to Lu Bai's side, but he couldn't get any closer. The forbidden power covering him was too dense. At this moment, Yi Xian was blankly staring at the unconscious Lu Bai. His mind was completely blank. The three supreme experts were silent and didn't disturb him. As for Sect Master Bu Tian, he didn't dare to make a sound. Time passed by slowly. After 3 days and 3 nights, Yi Xian's dazed eyes started to focus. His sluggish thoughts started to turn. Mr. Yu, Yi Qingmei took a step forward. But before she could finish her words, Yi Xian waved his hand with his back facing her. This caused Yi Qingmei to stop talking and her footsteps. At this moment, no one could see Yi Xian's expression. This was because Yi Xian was staring at Lu Bai's forehead. It was because of a mysterious symbol that appeared on Lu Bai's forehead. His mind was in shock. It was this symbol that caused Yi Xian's heart to tremble to the extreme. This was because Yi Xian also had the same symbol on his forehead. Even though the symbol on his forehead was different from Lu Bai's, Yi Xian could feel that there was a connection between the two that he didn't understand. It was just that the symbol on Lu Bai's forehead was very clear, but Yi Xian's mysterious symbol was hidden in his consciousness. Yi Xian didn't know what the connection was. But Yi Xian was extremely sure of one thing. These two symbols definitely had a huge secret. As Yi Xian's mind raced, he remembered what Lu Bai had said to him when he was awake. 12 void-shattering cauldrons. Samsara. Scripture. Halberd. Key. Primal chaos. Samsara. Don't open me. Yi Xian murmured in his heart, constantly recalling Lu Bai's words. Although the sentence was intermittent, he didn't understand what Lu Bai was trying to say to him. Before Lu Bai finished speaking, he fell asleep again. However, Yi Xian was no fool. 12 heaven-shattering cauldrons was a given. Yi Xian guessed that the meaning of reincarnation was the primal chaos reincarnation or the gate of reincarnation. The halberd should be the heaven-destroying halberd. Scripture, could it be the ancient bronze scripture in his hands? But if it was the ancient bronze scripture, why did Lu Bai mention the word reincarnation in front of it? Was it the Reincarnation Sutra? Or the ancient bronze scripture? Or perhaps, the other name of the ancient bronze scripture was the Reincarnation Scripture. Key. What was the key? Don't open it, what does that mean? Yi Xian felt that his brain was about to explode. He felt that he had vaguely grasped something, but the fog in front of him prevented him from seeing the path ahead. The things that Lu Bai had mentioned seemed to be connected, but also seemed to be separate. Yi Xian was extremely perplexed and couldn't make sense of it at all. But Yi Xian firmly remembered Lu Bai's words in the depths of his mind, because this was what Lu Bai had told him when he was awake for a short while. All of a sudden, just as Yi Xian was deep in thought, Lu Bai underwent another shocking change, which instantly alerted the three supreme experts. Their bodies simultaneously erupted with supreme strength. Wang. The mysterious symbol on Lu Bai's forehead flickered intensely, and a dot of black light faintly seeped out. The forbidden power that surrounded Lu Bai's body spun strangely until a black light suddenly shot out from Lu Bai's forehead and flew straight towards Yi Xian. Sir, be careful. At this critical moment, Yi Qingmei couldn't care less about the so-called forbidden power. Her entire body was about to shield Yi Xian, but before she could do anything, Yi Xian suddenly called out to her. Don't move. In that instant, the black light had already flown into Yi Xian's hand. It didn't cause any harm to Yi Xian, which made Yi Qingmei sigh in relief. But when the three supreme experts saw the item in Yi Xian's hand clearly, their eyes were filled with shock and doubt. They even activated their supreme transcendence eyes to observe the item in Yi Xian's hand. An ancient mirror. A black ancient mirror. A mottled and broken ancient mirror. This black ancient mirror was mottled and broken. It could no longer reflect anything on the surface of the mirror. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that there were some dark red marks on the surface of the mirror, as if it had been soaked in the blood of some kind of creature. However, because it was too old, one would not be able to discover any abnormalities if one did not look carefully. This is a forbidden artifact. After a full dozen breaths of time, the space-time master's voice quietly rang out. A forbidden artifact. Yi Xian murmured. Holding the black ancient mirror in his hand, his eyes were filled with confusion. In terms of age, the space-time master had lived for far longer than the other two supreme experts. Naturally, his knowledge was also extraordinary. He knew many secrets that the other supreme experts didn't know. This caused Yi Xian to look at him. A forbidden artifact is not allowed in the primal chaos. It is also an artifact used by forbidden figures. Its power is unfathomable and cannot be underestimated. If my guess is correct, this ancient mirror was given to you by Lu Bai. Although he is in a deep sleep, he should still be able to sense everything in the outside world, the space-time master concluded. Lonely and speechless, eternal sorrow. Brother Bai. Yi Xian held the black ancient mirror, his eyes filled with complicated grief. He didn't want to know what kind of power the black ancient mirror in his hand had, nor did he want to know how much this forbidden artifact could help him. Right now, he only had Lu Bai in his eyes. How can I save you? Yi Xian stared blankly at Lu Bai, who was surrounded by the forbidden energy. His voice was so soft that it couldn't be heard by the ears of a mosquito. A deep sense of helplessness filled Yi Xian's mind. Looking at Yi Xian's lonely and desolate back, the three supreme experts shook their heads helplessly. Not to mention whether or not Yi Xian had asked them to save Lu Bai, just the fact that Lu Bai, who had a chaotic spiritual body, had been tainted by the forbidden energy was already a pity. A person who could have become a supreme expert of all time had ended up in such a situation. If Lu Bai didn't wake up, he would really have a close brush with becoming a supreme expert of all time. Many thanks to the three of you. I, Yi Xian, will remember today's kindness. Yi Xian slowly turned around and cupped his hands towards the three supreme experts. He appeared very calm, but everyone knew that this was only on the surface. In the depths of Yi Xian's heart, it was likely that the world had already collapsed. Although I didn't help you, I have accepted your item. You and I don't owe each other anything. Farewell. After saying this, the Lord of all Spirits' figure faded until he disappeared. Just as the Lord of all Spirits had said, although he didn't save Lu Bai, he still had to trouble a supreme expert of all time to help him. This was already a great honor. Little friend, I am very happy that you are still alive, but I hope that you can bear with it. If the undying Heaven Lord and the others find out that you are still alive, you will be in big trouble. Before leaving, the Lord of Time and Space warned Yi Xian, then drifted away. Sir, without waiting for Yi Qingmei to speak, Yi Xian slowly shook his head and said, I know that you are worried about me, but right now, I just want to stay here quietly for a while. Go back. Yi Xian's words were a bit heartless, but his heart was in a mess. If the Lord of Extreme Love stayed here, it would only make his heart more chaotic. He couldn't save Lu Bai, and the entanglement with the Lord of Extreme Love would only make him feel worse. Right now, he really just wanted to be alone. Sir, no matter what happens, I will always be by your side. Yi Qingmei was not a weak woman. She would not be spoiled and willful like a weak woman. She was a supreme expert of all time, a true strong woman. She knew that right now, Yi Xian needed some peace and quiet, so she quietly retreated. But before she left, she looked at Yi Xian's back with deep affection. Extreme love. Extreme love. Although it made Yi Qingmei the supreme expert of all time, it also made her unable to extricate herself. Chapter 1528. The three supreme experts had left and failed to save Liu Bai. The entire heavenly palace had been destroyed. Even though the disciples of the heaven-mending sect had heard the commotion outside, they had already received orders not to come out. Naturally, they did not know what had happened inside the sect. On the black stone platform, Liu Bai was sleeping peacefully. However, the forbidden energy surrounding him was very dense. Yi Xian and sect leader Bu Tian could not get close. Boom! Yi Xian reached out with his 5 fingers. A gust of wind blew between the heaven and earth. He moved boulders from millions of miles away and rebuilt the heavenly palace. Under the support of his great magic power, he even engraved a peerless formation. Inside the heavenly palace, Liu Bai was sleeping peacefully. Only Yi Xian held the ancient black mirror without saying anything. Sect leader Bu Tian could only sigh. Even the 3 supreme experts could not do anything. Sect leader Bu Tian began to feel despair. Forbidden, power. In a low and powerful voice, Yi Xian slowly raised his hand in front of sect leader Bu Tian's shocked gaze. Something that shocked him even more happened. Whing. The space between Yi Xian's eyebrows flashed intensely. The ancient bronze scripture appeared. Even the heaven-destroying halberd rippled out. The 2 items landed in Yi Xian's hands at the same time. Go! This was the first time Yi Xian had used the ancient bronze scripture. He poured all of his great magic power into the ancient bronze scripture, causing it to shine even more terrifyingly. The pages of the scripture flipped rapidly. One could even see the 5 tiny cauldrons engraved on them. Heaven-destroying. However, this was not the end. Yi Xian roared. The heaven-destroying halberd moved according to his will and shot towards Liu Bai. Something shocking happened. When the ancient bronze scripture and heaven-destroying halberd descended towards Liu Bai, the forbidden energy surrounding him was quickly dispersed. It was as if it had met its natural enemy. It was as if it was completely suppressed by the 2 items. Heaven-shattering cauldron. Although sect leader Bu Tian did not recognize the ancient bronze scripture, how could he not recognize the tiny cauldron engraved on the pages? This caused him to cry out in shock. His heart was in turmoil. Suppress. Yi Xian didn't care about sect master Bu Tian's shock. He repeatedly roared as he used his supreme magic power to activate the 2 items. The forbidden energy around Liu Bai's body gradually faded, causing Yi Xian's mind to become excited. His originally lonely and desolate eyes gradually became spirited. It was indeed useful. The ancient bronze scripture and heaven-punishing halberd were indeed useful. Yi Xian's heart was screaming madly. He was extremely excited. However, the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. In the next moment, Liu Bai's body erupted with a terrifying death ray, and the forbidden power blasted the 2 objects away. Yi Xian, who was connected to the 2 objects, spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. Swoosh! Swoosh! The ancient bronze scripture and heaven-destroying halberd flew back and sank back into Yi Xian's forehead. Even after using these 2 items, they still failed in the end. Yi Xian slowly stood up. He gently wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. His entire body was terrifyingly lonely, and a desolate aura faintly seeped out. Protect him well and wait for my return. Yi Xian only left behind these words before instantly disappearing from the heavenly palace. Only the heaven-mending sect master was stunned on the spot. He didn't recover from his shock for a long time because today's experience had shocked him to the extreme. First, the 3 supreme experts arrived. Then, the forbidden power appeared. Then, Yi Xian took out the ancient bronze scripture with the heaven-shattering cauldron engraved on it. His hair stood on end, and his scalp went numb. Sect leader Bu Tian finally came back to his senses. His entire body was filled with lingering fear. Today's events made him feel that he had learned too many secrets that he should not have known. He had even been swept into an unimaginable secret. Sect leader Butian was a veteran Immortal Realm cultivator and the leader of a large sect. He deeply understood one principle. Some secrets could be learned, but if he did not have enough strength to learn some secrets, death would very likely be waiting for him. Sect leader Butian was filled with lingering fear, but he knew that there was no way out. He could only do as Yi Xian said and protect Lu Bai. This was perhaps his only way out. However, sect leader Butian was very confused. He did not know where Yi Xian had gone. Even the supreme experts could not do anything. Could it be that he had some other way to save Lu Bai? The answer was yes. However, Yi Xian did not want to choose this path until the very last moment. This was because the things involved were not even certain. Perhaps it would not only harm Lu Bai, but also himself. However, Yi Xian had already reached a dead end. This was the only way. He could only brace himself and continue forward. The primal chaos universe was vast and boundless. Not to mention the so-called immortal realm, even the supreme experts of ancient times might not necessarily understand it. This was because the primal chaos universe contained too many secrets and countless dangers. In the past, Yi Xian had come from the chaos universe. The dangers he had encountered along the way were still fresh in his memory. The space insect race, the primal chaos black hole, the giant space beasts, the so-called primal chaos astral wind, and so on, these dangers could take one's life. Fortunately, Yi Xian was not the same as before. He had now stepped into the immortal realm and had mastered countless terrifying techniques. The dangers in the primal chaos universe were no longer a threat to him. A vast sea of stars surged in the starry sky. Yi Xian stood on the tip of the waves with his hands clasped behind his back. This sea of stars was pushing him forward. Just the terrifying aura that Yi Xian released was enough to make some of the space beasts retreat. Even the space bugs were reduced to ashes. However, Yi Xian still frowned when he encountered some chaotic black holes. This was because these chaotic black holes were extremely terrifying. Unless one had stepped into the half-step supreme realm, they might be able to escape. Otherwise, even those at the peak of the immortal realm would perish. Fortunately, Yi Xian's calamity transformation was a forbidden technique. Moreover, he had the power of time and space. He could clearly sense the appearance of the chaotic black holes and perfectly avoid these dangers. As for the chaotic gales that could be seen everywhere, they could not hurt him at all. The sea of stars churned at extreme speed. This sea of stars whistled through the primal chaos universe, carrying Yi Xian towards the chaos universe. That's right, the chaos universe. It was not that Yi Xian missed the homeland where he had grown up. It was because there was one person in the chaos universe. This person was Yi Xian's last hope. Only he could save Lu Bai. The Eternal Shadow. That's right, the Eternal Shadow who had walked out of the long river of time. He was also known as a taboo character by the supreme experts of ancient times. Since Lu Bai had been planted with a taboo power, only a taboo character could save him. The only taboo character that Yi Xian knew was the Eternal Shadow. Chapter 1529. If Yi Xian hadn't reached a dead end, he definitely wouldn't have sought him out. This was because Eternal Shadow was far too terrifying and his identity far too mysterious. His cultivation could even be described as invincible in the primordial chaos. The so-called taboos were not tolerated by the primordial chaos. Just thinking about it made one realize how terrifying they were. And after their first encounter, Yi Xian understood that he was nothing more than a chess piece in Eternal Shadow's eyes, a chess piece that he might be able to use. Although Eternal Shadow had passed on 2 forbidden techniques to him, this didn't mean that they had a good relationship. He was just using him. Yi Xian understood this principle very well. In the battle between the strongest, he had killed the Lord of the Extreme Devil using the Future Transfiguration technique. This technique was extremely limited, requiring the right time, place, and people to use it. But when the Future Transfiguration technique dissipated, he suffered a fatal blow from the undying God Lord. He could be said to have died. If he hadn't learned Eternal Shadow's reverse technique, he would never have been able to come back from the dead. The inverse character technique and the attack character technique were only two forbidden techniques. Although the attack character technique was much weaker than the inverse character technique, Yi Xian had heard from the Eternal Shadow that he had 8 forbidden techniques. These were only 2 of them. Yi Xian was able to understand the terrifying effects of these 2 incantations. The inverse character technique had saved his life, and the attack character technique had caused his battle prowess to be monstrous. And these were only 2 of the 8 forbidden techniques. How terrifying were the other 6? From this, one could see just how powerful and mysterious Eternal Shadow was. Even Yi Xian's so-called future self was no match for Eternal Shadow. Yi Xian traveled at extreme speed, the sea of stars churning beneath his feet. However, his thoughts were in a mess as he recalled everything he had learned about Eternal Shadow. 100 years quickly passed. A blurry image of a world finally appeared in front of him. It was the great desolate world that Yi Xian was familiar with. This woke him up from his thoughts, and his lonely eyes gradually became resolute. Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward, and the sea of stars beneath his feet vanished. He transformed into a beam of light and entered the great desolate world. The sky was high and the clouds were light in the untainted world. Yi Xian stood in the sky as if he was air. Even the passing immortals couldn't discover his figure when they passed by him on a cloud. At this moment, in Yi Xian's eyes, the immortals in the untainted world were too low level. If they were placed in the chaotic world, they would only be on the path of cultivation. This time, Yi Xian didn't want to see any old friends. The only person he wanted to see was Eternal Shadow. Yi Xian's aura covered the entire chaos world as he searched for Aeon Shadow. He even searched for the cave abode he had once stayed in with Aeon Shadow. However, he did not find any trace of him. In the sky, Yi Xian frowned. He didn't believe that the ancient shadow couldn't sense his return. The other party was clearly avoiding him. "Senior, please meet me." Yi Xian bowed. His voice wasn't loud, as if it was an ordinary voice, and it didn't spread far and wide. However, Yi Xian believed that the Eternal Shadow would definitely be able to hear his words. "I once said that I wouldn't help you. You're just wasting your time looking for me. It's better for you to cultivate. This is what you should be doing." A desireless voice sounded in Yi Xian's ears. It didn't have any human emotions, but it made Yi Xian feel refreshed. "Senior, please take a look. I'm willing to pay any price to exchange with you. I only ask that you help me this once." Yi Xian bowed once more, lowering his posture to the extreme. Boom! A black vortex suddenly sucked Yi Xian into it. Yi Xian didn't resist and disappeared into the sky. This was a secluded valley. Birds chirped and flowers bloomed. A small stream flowed. Beasts could be seen running through the forest from time to time. Birds flew past the trees and chirped. A house was situated by the side of an ancient pool, and some flowers and plants were planted in the surroundings of the house. A black figure sat cross-legged by the side of the ancient pool, and his entire body was silent and motionless like a rock that had been there since ancient times. "Little friend, congratulations on reaching the Undying Realm." Gai Tianyuan came back from the forest with some wood. He was dressed like a farmer and looked like a mortal. He didn't look like a peerless expert at all. After not seeing each other for so many years, Gai Tianyuan followed by the side of the Eternal Shadow. It could be said that he had obtained great fortune, and even Yi Xian couldn't see through his cultivation. If Yi Xian wasn't wrong, then the other party had probably already stepped into the ranks of the half-step strongest. Half-step sovereign. He was only 2 words away from an eternal sovereign. However, as long as an eternal sovereign didn't appear, a half-step sovereign would be able to rule the universe. But now, he had become someone's servant, working like a mortal farmer. You're not bad yourself. It's just a pity that you won't be able to become an eternal sovereign. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Senior said that I don't have the opportunity to become an eternal sovereign. Even if I work hard, I'll only be a stepping stone for someone else. It's better to become a half-step sovereign. This is also a good result. Gai Tianyuan smiled bitterly. Go. Gai Tianyuan secretly gave Yi Xian a look. He looked at the wood on his shoulder and left. Yi Xian took a deep breath and walked toward the ancient shadow. Forbidden. No one can save you. Without waiting for Yi Xian to ask, the ancient shadow said emotionlessly. I don't believe it. Yi Xian was stunned for a full 3 breaths of time. Then, he stared fixedly at the back of this taboo figure and spat out these 3 words with certainty. You don't believe it? The ancient shadow slowly stood up and looked back at Yi Xian. The light of death around him made it impossible to see his expression, but Yi Xian could sense the mockery in his scarlet eyes. What do you think forbidden power is? Asked the ancient shadow. I don't understand. That's why I'm here to beg you. Yi Xian said in a low voice. The so-called taboo isn't the realm above the eternal sovereign. In layman's terms, people like me are merely eternal sovereigns. However, something has happened to me, and I'm no longer accepted by the Chaos Verse. My origin force is against the Chaos Verse. This is the meaning of the taboo. Of course, people like me are indeed above the eternal sovereigns. It's not wrong to call them taboo realms. The power we possess can also be called taboo power. Hearing the words of the eternal shadow, Yi Xian's eyes were filled with bewilderment. This allowed him to know some secrets about taboo characters, but this time, he didn't want to discuss these things with the eternal shadow. He came for Lu Bai, and only the eternal shadow in front of him could save Lu Bai. I only want to save him, and you're the only one who can save him. No matter what price you have to pay, as long as you're willing to save him, I'm willing to give you my life, said Yi Xian coldly. Your life? Ha ha ha. The ancient shadow laughed mockingly. He glanced sideways at Yi Xian and said, if I wanted your life, you'd be dead already. Why would I need you to give it to me? Chapter 1530. Yi Xian wasn't moved by Eternal Shadow's mockery because he needed help. He wasn't as strong as Eternal Shadow, so he had the awareness of being weak and asking for help. Moreover, how powerful was the Eternal Shadow? Yi Xian knew that it wouldn't be that simple to ask for his help. His life was indeed nothing in the eyes of the Eternal Shadow. Then what do you want? Yi Xian remained silent for a while before looking up at Eternal Shadow. Yi Xian always believed that all living things had their own desires. As long as they had desires, they would have what they wanted. This was also the law of equivalent exchange in this world. Nothing in this world was impossible. It only depended on how much of a price one had to pay. Yi Xian believed that the Eternal Shadow didn't meet him here to talk nonsense with him. Instead, he had his own motives. It's very simple. I want your first heavenly gate. Like a sudden clap of thunder and waves of the vast ocean, Eternal Shadow straightforwardly stated his request. However, when Yi Xian heard it, he was stunned on the spot. His expression turned gloomy. Immortal Level 4, 9 Great Heavenly Gates. Every heavenly gate opened was the process to become the strongest in all of eternity. If any heavenly gate was destroyed, then that person's life would be crippled. From then on, he would never be able to improve, let alone become the strongest in all of eternity. To use a simple analogy, to build a house, one needed to lay the foundation. If the foundation was destroyed, the house wouldn't be able to be built. The first heavenly gate of the immortal realm was the foundation to become the strongest in all of eternity. The two were of the same principle. To Yi Xian, this was more serious than taking his life. If he couldn't improve in this life and lost his first heavenly gate, what was the point of Yi Xian living? Living was worse than death. These four simple words explained Yi Xian's current mood. However, he appeared very calm, so calm that it was terrifying. This was because he had already made a decision. A decision that he wouldn't regret. Back then, Liu Bai had worked his heart out to create the inverse immortal array for him and died. His soul had been scattered between heaven and earth. Even though Yi Xian had resurrected him later, Liu Bai had still sacrificed too much for him. Currently, Liu Bai was in a deep slumber, and only the eternal shadow could save him. The other party only wanted his first heavenly gate. This deal was very cruel to Yi Xian, but Yi Xian could not reject it. Alright, since you want my first gate of heaven, I'll give it to you. Rumble. Yi Xian didn't say anything unnecessary. He was terrifyingly lonely and calm. A terrifying power erupted from his body. A heavenly gate appeared behind him and rotated continuously in the void. Have you really thought it through? Even Eternal Shadow did not expect Yi Xian to be so resolute. This also made him slightly stunned as he sized up Yi Xian. Could it be that this brat did not know that after losing the first gate of heaven, he would not be able to make any progress in the future? Even his cultivation would not be as good as before. It's a fair trade. We each take what we need. You can take it. Yi Xian's voice was short and simple. Even though he was at a disadvantage, his resolute eyes made others feel his determination and palpitations. All right. Eternal Shadow nodded slowly. He was not testing Yi Xian, because there was no need to. He really wanted Yi Xian's first gate of heaven, because this gate of heaven had something that he coveted very much. Boom! Eternal Shadow's 5 fingers suddenly stretched out, but before he could grab Yi Xian's gate of heaven, something extremely shocking happened. Boom! A terrifying death ray erupted from Yi Xian's chest and blasted towards Eternal Shadow with an unstoppable might. A black mottled ancient mirror appeared from Yi Xian's chest. This was the item that Liu Bai had given Yi Xian while he was unconscious. It was protecting its master. No, it was not protecting its master. It was as if this ancient black mirror contained Liu Bai's will. When a great crisis threatened Yi Xian, this ancient black mirror automatically displayed its terrifying might. Humph! Eternal Shadow's aura was stifled. In the next moment, a cold snort sounded. The death ray from his 5 fingers exploded, and the ancient black mirror wailed and fell to the ground with a bang. The forbidden power that erupted from it had completely dissipated. If it were an absolute powerhouse, the ancient black mirror would indeed be a great threat. However, Eternal Shadow was a true forbidden character. How could he be forced to retreat by a mere forbidden item? Boom! Eternal Shadow's 5 fingers suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's gate of heaven and pulled it in front of him. His scarlet eyes were filled with excitement. His withered hand suddenly reached into the gate of heaven as if he was grabbing something. It really is the profound meaning of reincarnation. In the next moment, the ancient shadow let out an excited roar. His scarlet eyes flickered violently as a trace of mysterious splendor was grabbed out by him. Yi Xian's first heaven gate violently shook, and with a loud bang, it directly exploded into pieces in the air. Pfft! Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of essence blood. His face was extremely pale. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. However, Yi Xian's tenacious will supported himself. He did not want to become weak and collapse. Even more so, he did not want Eternal Shadow to see him as a joke. However, blood continued to flow from Yi Xian's mouth. The destruction of the gate of heaven was a heavy blow to his foundation. Yi Xian's mind was in a daze. Although his cultivation did not fall by much, there was no possibility of it increasing. Good, Good, good. The eternal shadow didn't even glance at Yi Xian. He held a trace of mysterious splendor in his hand, and a terrifying taboo energy violently churned. His scarlet eyes seemed to be admiring the most beautiful treasure in the world. Fulfill your promise. Yi Xian forced himself not to faint. Losing his first gate of heaven was a heavy blow to him. However, he stared fixedly at Eternal Shadow, waiting for him to fulfill his promise. Perhaps it was Yi Xian's words that caused the Eternal Shadow to turn around. He infused the mysterious light in his hand into his body, and a trace of vitality actually appeared on his body. Although it was only a flash, it made the Eternal Shadow look somewhat different. After doing all this, Eternal Shadow seemed to exhale in satisfaction. Then, he looked calmly at Yi Xian and said, I just told you that no one can save you because of the forbidden power. I'm not lying to you. It's the truth. Are you toying with me? In the next moment, Yi Xian's eyes were still and sinister. He gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. A killing intent he had never felt before erupted from Yi Xian. Facing Yi Xian's killing intent, the Eternal Shadow wasn't affected in the slightest. Instead, he continued indifferently, you can't imagine how vast the chaos is. The so-called taboo is not tolerated by the chaos. Although I am one of the taboo, everyone's taboo power is different. Even if I personally went to save him, he would still turn into ashes and die under the counteraction of the two taboo powers. That's why I said that no one can save him from the taboo. Chapter 1531. Aeon Shadow paused for a moment before continuing, however, since I've promised you, I won't break my promise. I'll show you a path. As for whether or not you can save him, that will depend on your own ability. You piece of shit. Yi Xian weakly said. His eyes were filled with tyranny, but he was powerless against the ancient shadow in front of him. I know you hate me, but I didn't lie to you. Before you came, I already told you that I couldn't save him because of the restriction. If you weren't willing to give up your gate of heaven, I wouldn't even have given you the chance to save him. So, I didn't lie to you. Aeon Shadow was indifferent to Yi Xian's hatred. At his level, he wouldn't be moved by words. Qi. The ancient shadow shot out a starry sky compass and firmly landed in Yi Xian's hands. His voice also sounded out at the right time. There is someone who might be able to save him at the end of this starry sky compass. However, whether or not that person is willing to help you will depend on your own ability. You may leave. Aeon Shadow waved his hand, ordering Yi Xian to leave. As he held the starry sky compass in his hand, Yi Xian's eyes were gloomy and silent. He silently picked up the black ancient mirror on the ground and didn't say anything unnecessary as he staggered out of the valley. However, before Yi Xian could take more than 10 steps, Aeon Shadow's calm voice came from behind Yi Xian. Perhaps he couldn't bear to see Yi Xian leave, or perhaps he had other intentions. Although your gate of heaven has been destroyed, the reverse symbol art can seize the mysteries of chaos and the mysteries of the universe. Perhaps you still have a glimmer of hope. Take care of yourself. Unfortunately, Yi Xian treated his words like air. He walked forward alone. Although he staggered, he didn't stop at all. He didn't even turn around to look at Aeon Shadow. What a stubborn brat. Looking at Yi Xian's departing figure, the Eternal Shadow's aura became slightly chaotic as he muttered to himself. However, he did not regret what he had just done because he really did need the trace of the mysteries of reincarnation in Yi Xian's gate of heaven. Ancestor of all beasts, I believe that you are still alive. I want to see if you will help him. Do you want this chess piece or not? The ancient shadow's scarlet eyes flickered slightly. He sat cross-legged by the ancient pond again, as if he had turned back into an ancient boulder. The sky was high, the clouds were light, and the wind was refreshing. The entire untainted world was filled with spiritual qi, and even the vegetation had grown much taller than before. However, Yi Xian staggered alone in the forest. He carried some loneliness and sorrow, and his eyes were extremely muddled. Finally, he could not hold on any longer. He fainted on the ground and rolled down the slope of the cliff. Plop! Below the cliff was a surging river. It was unknown where this river led to, but it carried Yi Xian away in the ripples until Yi Xian completely disappeared. Blood, fresh blood, bleak and magnificent fresh blood. Dreams, nightmares where Lu Bai died tragically in front of him. Kill, kill until there is no road between heaven and earth. Kill, kill until all living beings wail in grief. Slaughter and blood intertwined. People of the past died one after another. Even Yi Xian died alone in a mysterious and unknown place. He roared madly at the sky, but there was no response from the universe. Only a sad and bleak smile appeared on his face. Ah! Yi Xian suddenly woke up from this nightmare. His whole body exuded an extremely sad and lonely aura. His eyes were muddled and confused. He was still immersed in this nightmare. Ah, you're awake. Suddenly, a weak voice sounded. It was a little boy about 7 or 8 years old. He looked at Yi Xian, who had just woken up from a nightmare, with slight fear. This little boy's clothes were ragged, and his little face was a little dirty. However, his eyes were very bright, and he gave people a feeling of cleverness. The little boy's voice caused Yi Xian's eyes to gradually focus. He finally saw the place in front of him clearly. At this moment, he was lying on a broken bed. The room was slightly smashed, and there were some simple daily necessities. He could clearly see the appearance of this little boy in front of him. Where is this? Who are you? Why am I here? Yi Xian slowly sat up. He looked at the little boy in front of him with lonely eyes and asked 3 questions in a row. This is the dreamy cloud swampland's Daby Mountain. My name is Little Shirtu. 3 days ago, I was fishing by the river and happened to save you from the river. Then, I brought you home. Big brother, what is your name? Although Little Shirtu was a little afraid of Yi Xian's eyes, he still answered Yi Xian's 3 questions in an orderly manner. He was so clever and calm at such a young age. This child must have experienced some hardships, so he was obviously a little precocious. Dreamy cloud swampland. Daby Mountain. Yi Xian muttered softly. He gradually recalled that the gate of heaven was destroyed by the eternal shadow. He carried the starry sky compass and the black ancient mirror and wandered aimlessly. In the end, he fainted. Starry sky compass. Black ancient mirror. Yi Xian suddenly woke up with a start. These 2 things were related to Lu Bai, so they couldn't be lost. Big brother, are you looking for these 2 things? Little Shirtu was very clever. He hurriedly took out 2 things from the corner and dragged them to Yi Xian's side. They were Yi Xian's starry sky compass and black ancient mirror. Little Shirtu was too young. He was only 7 or 8 years old. However, he lived in the mountains all year round, so his strength wasn't small. However, a child was still a child. When he saved Yi Xian, he spent a lot of effort to bring him home. The starry sky compass and black ancient mirror were in Yi Xian's hands. He knew that they should be extremely important to Yi Xian, so he brought them back together. He was going to return them to Yi Xian when Yi Xian woke up. Thank you. Yi Xian looked deeply at Little Shirtu. He waved his hand and took the 2 things into his body. However, the scene in front of him made Little Shirtu's eyes shine brightly. Big brother, are you an immortal? Little Shirtu asked excitedly. Looking at the little boy in front of him, Yi Xian didn't know how to answer. However, he still nodded and said, you can say that. That's great. You really are an immortal. Immortal above, please accept a bow from your disciple. Please accept me as your disciple. Your disciple will definitely respect you and be filial to you. Little Shitu knelt on the ground excitedly. He kept kowtowing to Yi Xian. His forehead was bleeding from the kowtow. You want to be my disciple? Yi Xian was stunned. He didn't seem to have ever taken a disciple. The disciples he had taken in the past were just used. There was no such thing as a master-disciple relationship. Whether it was Yi Xian Mo, who was sent to the Grand Central Territory by him, or Luo Ho, who was his enemy in the Eldritch world, the two of them took in disciples. In the end, they were just their chess pieces. Even a little girl who looked very similar to Gu Xiaoxiao was casually given a cultivation method. Since the last time he returned to the Eldritch world, she had already become the master of the Celestial Court. However, there was no such thing as a master-disciple relationship between them. Even Yi Xian had forgotten about her. Now, the little boy in front of him was just a mortal. He didn't even have a so-called battle constitution. However, at this moment, he wanted to be Yi Xian's disciple. This made Yi Xian's lonely and sad heart tremble slightly. Chapter 1532. Immortal, please show mercy and accept this disciple as your disciple. I beg you. Little Shitu was still kowtowing. His forehead was already stained with blood. Yi Xian stared at the little boy in front of him in a daze. A look of contemplation flashed through his eyes. That's right. His heavenly gate had been destroyed and his foundation had been destroyed. He didn't have a single successor for his Tongtian cultivation. He didn't even know how to proceed in the future. Did he really have to pass down his skills? However, although the child in front of him was very clever, his aptitude wasn't high. He could only be considered average. He didn't even have a so-called battle constitution. He was really too ordinary. If it was in the past, Yi Xian wouldn't have cared about the aptitude of the little boy in front of him. Even if he had the potential to be a heaven-defying genius, Yi Xian wouldn't have given him a second glance. This was because he had never thought of accepting anyone as his disciple. However, at this moment, Yi Xian changed his mind. So what if he was immortal? So what if his aptitude wasn't good? When Yi Xian was young, he was also like this child in front of him. However, he still walked step by step until today. Could it be that mediocre mortals couldn't go against the flow and truly break those rules and regulations? Wasn't he, Yi Xian, the best example? Get up. I will accept you as my disciple. Remember, you are also the only disciple of Yi Xian. Yi Xian pondered for a long time and finally made a decision. He needed a successor for his skills. Although this was his first time meeting this child, he could see his nature at a glance. He was smart and steady, young and mature. Although his aptitude was only average and he was only a mortal, he wasn't a pedantic person. This could be seen from his conversation. Thank you, Master. This disciple kowtows to you. Little Shitu was so excited that he was crying. He kowtowed with all his might on the ground to express his respect and admiration for Yi Xian. I will only stay for 7 days. Learn as much as you can. After 7 days, I will leave. We may not meet again in the future. Yi Xian calmly said in a low voice. The master can show you the way, but it's up to you to cultivate. Back then, Yi Xian had been groomed by Yuan Ling, and Yuan Ling had only taught him cultivation techniques. His growth had been achieved through killing. Therefore, Yi Xian would not guide this child in front of him. Everyone's path was different, and they all needed to walk on their own. When he heard Yi Xian's words, little Shitu was a little disappointed. However, he still calmly nodded his head. He knew that he was already blessed by the heavens to have such an opportunity. He really didn't dare to ask for anything more. In the past, he had painstakingly crawled to the Immortal cultivation sect and knelt for 7 days and 7 nights, hoping to be accepted as a disciple. However, these Immortal cultivation sects all rejected him because his aptitude was too low. Today, he was accepted as a disciple by an immortal. Although it was only for 7 days, he was already satisfied and did not dare to ask for more. Your name is Little Shirtu. Where's your family? After all, this little boy in front of him was Yi Xian's first true disciple. Naturally, he had to ask about this child's situation. When it came to his family, Little Shirtu bitterly shook his head and said, I am an orphan. I don't know who my parents are. When I was born, I was raised by a wild leopard mother. Later, the wild leopard mother was killed by an immortal cultivator and her inner core was taken away. I didn't dare to go out and have always lived in this forest. Although Little Shitu's words were very brief and his voice was very calm, Yi Xian could hear that within this child's calm voice, there was a great deal of hatred. Perhaps this was why he begged him to accept him as a disciple. He wanted to take revenge. Little Shirtu is just a nickname. Although you are an orphan, you cannot be nameless. You must have a real name. My surname is Yi. You can take my surname. From now on, you will be called Yi Fengtian, said Yi Xian. Yi Fengtian. Little Shirtu murmured. Then, he excitedly shouted, I have a name. I have a name. My name is Yi Fengtian. My name is Yi Fengtian. Although Little Shirtu was young and mature, he was still a child. At this moment, when he excitedly shouted, Yi Xian smiled. It was as if he was looking at his childhood self. Time was short. It was only 7 days. These 7 days were like a drop in the ocean for Yi Xian. However, for Little Shirtu, he practically didn't sleep or rest during these 7 days. He memorized all the techniques that Yi Xian taught him. Although Little Shirtu didn't understand the profound meaning of these techniques, he knew that he only had 7 days. Within these 7 days, he had to memorize everything that Yi Xian taught him as quickly as possible. Even if he didn't sleep or rest, he couldn't slack off. This child's perseverance surprised Yi Xian. Although his talent wasn't good, this perseverance was something that Yi Xian noticed. From the bottom of his heart, he began to like this disciple that he had officially accepted. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Little Shitu's eyes were red and the dark circles under his eyes were extremely deep. His entire body had become thin and even his bright eyes carried an extremely tired expression. He was only a child, only a 7 or 8-year-old child. To him, studying for 7 days and 7 nights without sleep and rest was like a life and death struggle. Fortunately, he endured it. Although he didn't completely memorize everything that Yi Xian taught him, he still remembered 60% of it. This was already very commendable. Outside the green mountains, beside the small stream, Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. Little Shirtu knelt on the ground. Tears continuously dripped from his eyes and sobs continuously came from his mouth. Although your talent is mediocre, you have to remember that there is originally no path in this world. However, as people walk on many paths, there will be a path. The path is under your own feet. Never believe in other people's judgment of you. You are only yourself. As long as you are firm in your own beliefs, even if your talent is mediocre, you will still be able to walk the Tongtian path. Yi Xian whispered in a lonely voice before he left. This disciple will remember Master's teachings and will never forget Master's kindness. This disciple kowtows to you. Little Shirtu heavily kowtowed 3 times to Yi Xian. Blood continuously flowed from his forehead. Although Yi Xian had only taught this child for 7 days, to Little Shirtu, other than his mother leopard, the person who treated him the best in the world was Yi Xian. Looking at the only disciple that he had acknowledged and accepted, he had only taught him for 7 days. He was indeed not a good master. This pill consolidates your foundation. It won't let you become an immortal cultivator, but it can open the door for you to become an immortal cultivator. Yi Xian casually grabbed a ball of spiritual energy and condensed it into a white pill. It directly fell into Little Shitu's hand. It wasn't that Yi Xian was stingy. He could have directly helped this child to enter the immortal realm. It wouldn't be a problem to even raise him to the 9th heaven of the quasi-saint realm. It wouldn't even be difficult for him to enter the great saint realm. However, Yi Xian didn't do so. If a person wanted to walk the path of the Tong Tian, he had to walk it step by step. If he spoiled the child with excessive enthusiasm, he would only harm the child. Chapter 1533. Suddenly, Yi Xian took a step forward and no longer looked at Little Stone. Only a lonely and sad figure was left in Little Stone's eyes forever. "Master, I beg you not to go." When it was time to part, Little Stone finally burst into tears, because Yi Xian had been regarded as a close relative in his heart. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not stay at all and had already disappeared into the sky. If my, Yi Xian's, disciple really has great perseverance and is able to walk out of this great desolate world, compete with the various supreme beings in the primal chaos world, and even catch up to me, then you and I will meet one day. Yi Xian's voice sounded in Little Stone's ears, which made Little Stone wipe away the tears in his eyes and shout loudly to heaven and earth. "Master, this disciple will definitely follow your teachings. One day, this disciple will be like you and become a true powerhouse. This disciple will definitely catch up to your footsteps and meet you again, Master." Little Stone's sobbing voice sounded between heaven and earth, and a bolt of thunder flashed across the sky, as if to witness the child's vow. Yi Xian traveled through the primal chaos universe with the accompaniment of a cool breeze. Although the heaven gate had been destroyed, his cultivation hadn't dropped by much. It was just that he couldn't increase it in the slightest. The road ahead was cut off, but Yi Xian did not regret it. Although the eternal shadow regarded him as a chess piece, Yi Xian knew that he was too weak to negotiate with the other party. Yi Xian hated or resented, but he knew that weakness was the original sin. He was the one who asked for help, so he was ready to bear all the consequences. Although Yi Xian returned to the untainted world, he did not go to see any old friends there, because he had gone farther and farther. The untainted world was really too small. Even if he went back, he would not see any familiar people or things. Kong Xian and Sub Hoodie still had some interactions with each other, but they were only talking about the past. With the passage of time, Yi Xian's attention was fully focused on the chaotic universe, and his interactions with the primitive world grew fainter. It could be said that Yi Xian was heartless, but it could also be said that he was going further and further away. It was just that the path under one's feet needed to be walked by oneself. People could not stay in the same place as before. This was the case in the past, in the present, and in the future. Yi Xian stayed for 7 days and accepted Little Shirtu as his true disciple. During these 7 days, it seemed like he was teaching his disciple, but in fact, he was also thinking about his own future path and the matter of saving Lu Bai. Boom! Yi Xian shuttled through the starry universe until a withered star appeared in front of him. He landed on this star and sat down cross-legged. He began to examine himself and adjust his state of mind. This was because Yi Xian realized that his state of mind was too chaotic. If he did not adjust his state of mind and only focused on finding a way to save Lu Bai, he would be in big trouble before he could save Lu Bai, let alone save Lu Bai. The root of all this was the destruction of the gate of heaven. At this moment, his cultivation had stagnated at the initial stage of the immortal realm. Although his cultivation did not drop, this feeling of stagnation made Yi Xian feel what it meant to be anxious. Reverse character art. Yi Xian did not forget what the Eternal Shadow had told him. This was also a glimmer of hope that the Eternal Shadow had given him. He believed that the reverse character art should have the heaven-defying power to rebuild the first gate of heaven. Rumble. Yi Xian silently recited the reverse character art, and a mysterious brilliance began to revolve around his body. This brilliance was not a forbidden power, but an extremely mysterious power. Even the surrounding primal chaos law was retreating. This was the terrifying effect of the reverse character art, which was also known as a forbidden power. Back then, Yi Xian could be said to have died. It was all because of the reverse character art that he was able to come back to life. From this, one could see the terrifying effect of the reverse character art. If it could even reverse the death calamity, it should not be difficult to reopen the first gate of heaven. As expected. Under the terrifying effect of the reverse character art, the phantom image of a gate appeared behind Yi Xian. Although it was extremely blurry and could not be seen clearly, it had indeed started to condense. However, in the next moment, Yi Xian suddenly dispersed the reverse character art, and the blurry gate of heaven behind him suddenly shattered. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Other people's techniques will always belong to other people. He is a forbidden figure and sees me as a chess piece. Back then, he died because of the reverse character art, but I also had a fair deal with him. I don't owe him anything. However, if I use the reverse character art to repair the gate of heaven when the gate of heaven is destroyed, my cultivation will be contaminated with his karma. In the future, it will definitely leave a hidden danger in my body. Yi Xian muttered to himself. He had already realized that things were not as simple as he thought. He also did not believe that the eternal shadow would be so kind. Benefits, it was just benefits. Everything the eternal shadow did had a great purpose. Yi Xian understood this very well. However, if I don't use the reverse character art to reopen the first gate of heaven, my cultivation will never be able to improve even half a step. Yi Xian frowned. He was facing the biggest problem. On the lonely star, Yi Xian sat cross-legged and pondered. The cultivation in his body stagnated. He had to solve this problem as soon as possible. This also caused him to start thinking. Time passed bit by bit. Yi Xian's frown deepened. He thought of various techniques, but none of them could allow him to reopen the gate of heaven. Secret techniques. Boom. Suddenly, Yi Xian opened his eyes. He used the eternal reincarnation fist, and the starry sky exploded. The mysterious symbol on his forehead appeared again, and at this moment, it flashed violently. Yi Xian didn't use this punch. Because the gate of heaven was destroyed, he was already a little weak. If he used the eternal reincarnation fist, it would worsen his weakened state. Yi Xian hurriedly stopped. A light flashed through his mind. He seemed to have thought of something, and he fell into deep thought again. Although my gate of heaven was destroyed, the eternal reincarnation fist that I comprehended from the first gate of heaven didn't disappear. What did this mean? 7 days later. Yi Xian's eyes gradually focused. The corner of his mouth curved into a self-mocking smile. He was really stupid. He actually ignored the essentials and focused on the trifles. The heaven burial technique that he cultivated was the essence. Yi Xian felt as if he'd come to a sudden realization. Ever since he'd created the heaven burial art, he'd mainly cultivated this cultivation technique. This cultivation technique contained the most profound mysteries, and even had Yi Xian's methods and Tao. It was the best of 100 schools. Even when he broke through to the immortal realm, the heaven burial technique was the main reason. Although the heaven calamity transformation helped him break through the shackles, the fundamental reason was still the heaven burial technique that he mainly cultivated. Since he could once rely on the heaven burial technique to open the first gate of heaven, even if the gate of heaven was destroyed today, couldn't he open the first gate of heaven again? Thinking of this, Yi Xian suddenly felt as if he'd been enlightened. Chapter 1534. Heaven's Burial. Rumble. In the next moment, Yi Xian frantically activated the Heaven's Burial art. Heaven's Burial divine light spread out and completely drowned him. Moreover, Yi Xian didn't just activate the Heaven's Burial art in his body, he also activated the Bronze Immortal Sutra. Buzz. The Bronze Immortal Sutra flipped and a total of 5 pages flickered violently. 5 small cauldron patterns shone brightly, especially the small cauldron pattern inscribed with the heaven's burial art. The light it emitted was even more dazzling. All of a sudden, the small cauldron suddenly shook and an extremely dazzling small cauldron phantom shot into Yi Xian's glabella. Yi Xian's entire body also underwent an extremely mystical change. Boom, boom, boom. Tong Tian moved the earth and pierced the galaxy. The heaven's burial divine light swept out in all directions. Yi Xian's body shook violently. The bronze Immortal Sutra above his head flickered and shone. The small cauldron pattern inscribed with the heaven's burial art was also releasing an extremely mysterious aura. Open. A sudden enlightenment surged in his mind. Yi Xian roared and a heavenly gate appeared behind him. Although it was also illusory and unclear, the aura it emitted was extremely shocking. It still contained the faintly discernible mysteries of reincarnation. But this time, this heavenly gate seemed to be slightly different from the destroyed heavenly gate. During the condensation process, it constantly released an aura that didn't exist in the chaos. Rumble. Something shocking happened. When Yi Xian reopened the first heavenly gate and gradually condensed it, it wasn't over yet. The 12 Chaos Yuanhui worlds that had been immersed in it suddenly erupted and appeared directly behind Yi Xian. Buzz. The 12 Chaos World Vortexes spun violently. The first Chaos World Vortex actually fused into the first heavenly gate that Yi Xian had just condensed. The heavenly gate immediately erupted with an incredible aura, directly shattering the lonely star that Yi Xian was sitting cross-legged and turning the starry sky into a vacuum. But it wasn't over yet. Boom. Boom. Something terrifying had happened. Numerous phantoms of the heavenly gates appeared behind Yi Xian. A total of 11 of them appeared. These were 11 phantoms of the heavenly gates. Although they were extremely blurry and couldn't be seen with the naked eye, they had indeed appeared. If Yi Xian had just reopened the first gate of heaven, there were a total of 12 gates of heaven behind him. Except for the first heavenly gate that Yi Xian had reopened, the other 11 heavenly gates were too illusory. Their auras were almost indiscernible, but they seemed to be resonating with the other 11 worlds. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, Yi Xian let out a wild laugh. He withdrew all of his cultivation and the 12 heavenly gates behind him disappeared. He looked extremely ordinary, but his wild laughter resounded through the starry universe. Good fortune, great good fortune. You bastard, you never expected this, did you? You destroyed my first heavenly gate, and actually allowed me to discover a great secret. Yi Xian's face was ferocious and ferocious. An extremely tyrannical aura spread out. The resentment and anger that had been suppressed in his heart for a long time were all vented at this moment. He was in a state of extreme excitement. The fourth level of the immortal realm, the 9 great gates of heaven. This was a lie that had deceived all living beings in the chaos. It was the biggest joke in the chaotic universe. Every living being had been deceived by this lie. The 9 great gates of heaven weren't the end. The true end was the 12th gate of heaven. This was also the true meaning of the immortal realm. If it wasn't for the eternal shadow that destroyed Yi Xian's gate of heaven, and if it wasn't for the help of the small cauldron that contained the burying heaven formula, he would never have discovered this secret in his life. He would definitely have thought that there were only 9 great gates of heaven in the immortal realm. At this moment, Yi Xian was extremely excited. This wasn't because he had reopened his first gate of heaven, but because he had discovered this top secret in the chaotic universe. Yi Xian didn't know if he was the only one who knew this secret, but he was certain that even the 10 strongest didn't know that there were 12 gates of heaven in the immortal realm. 12 and 1, the chaotic universe. Yi Xian murmured to himself. He had already thought of many things. The excitement in his eyes faintly faded away, and his heart was filled with anticipation. The 4th level of the immortal realm and the 9 great gates of heaven. This was a lie that deceived all living beings in the chaotic universe. No one knew when this lie started and how many cultivators had been deceived by it. Moreover, the fact that this lie could appear in the cultivation system of the immortal realm meant that the secret behind it was extremely shocking. 9 gates of heaven combined to form a perfect state, until one stepped into the half-step strongest realm, and then pursued the seat of the strongest throughout the ages. This cultivation system was deeply rooted in the hearts of all living beings in the chaotic universe. If Yi Xian's gate of heaven hadn't been destroyed, he would have thought that there were only 9 great gates of heaven in the immortal realm after he had reopened his gate of heaven. He would never have thought that there were 12 gates of heaven in the immortal realm. The 5th level of the immortal realm and the 12 gates of heaven are in harmony with the 12 yuans of the chaotic universe, forming a perfect blueprint of the chaotic universe. This is the true cultivation system of the immortal realm. If I can open all 12 gates of heaven, what will it be like? Yi Xian murmured to himself. His eyes were terrifyingly deep, and his heart was filled with great anticipation. Yi Xian had a premonition that if he could open all 12 gates of heaven, he wouldn't be able to say how powerful he would become, but something unexpected would definitely happen. And this matter involved the top secret of the chaotic universe, as well as himself, and even more so, his future path. Yi Xian's premonition was extremely strong. When he discovered the secret of the immortal realm, he felt as though he had stepped into a new world. Although his cultivation base hadn't increased, the path ahead of him had begun to become clear. On the other side, in the chaotic universe. Inside the secluded valley. Aeon Shadow suddenly raised his head and exclaimed in bewilderment. His scarlet eyes seemed to pierce through the endless void and stare at Yi Xian. You reopened the gates of heaven so quickly? Aeon Shadow's tone was still somewhat casual, but in the next moment, his breathing suddenly stopped. No. He didn't reopen the gates of heaven with the inverse character art. Boom. Aeon Shadow suddenly stood up, and a terrifying death light erupted from his body. If one were to observe carefully, they would discover that the light around him was extremely chaotic. Clearly, this forbidden figure's heart was in turmoil, and he was no longer as calm as before. How is this possible? How did he do it? Aeon Shadow's emotions were clearly out of control. His scarlet eyes flickered violently. For the first time, he felt that he couldn't control Yi Xian. Whether it was his future self or the current Yi Xian, Aeon Shadow viewed them as pawns. Even though his future self had amazed him in the past, it was only an illusory existence. It couldn't affect his plans at all. Chapter 1535. Did he find out the secret? His aura was in chaos. When such an inconceivable thought appeared in his mind, he could no longer remain calm. He was no longer as indifferent as before. Absolutely impossible. I only found out about this secret in the end. If I hadn't destroyed my cultivation and recultivated the 3 gates, I would have died in the previous chaos verse. The only ones who know about this secret are the old fogies who survived with me, Aeon Shadow murmured. Wan Guing muttered in bewilderment. The secret of the sempiternal realm was extremely important. If he had known about it back then, he wouldn't have ended up in his current state. I must be overthinking things. The concept of the 9 great gates is deeply rooted. Even if he knew about the last 3 gates, he wouldn't know how to cultivate them. Aeon Shadow denied his conjecture. He refused to believe that Yi Xian knew about this secret because it was too important. It involved the future of the strongest throughout the ages, his current cultivation level, and the final step of transcendence. To put it bluntly, the so-called strongest throughout the ages were far from being able to truly stand on equal footing with the forbidden characters. The most important part of this was the 12 gates of immortality. Only by truly cultivating the 12 gates would one be qualified to contend with them in the future. Otherwise, even the strongest throughout the ages would be nothing more than puppets in the chaos verse. The immortal realm was an extremely important cultivation system. Stepping into the immortal realm was equivalent to officially opening the path to the strongest throughout the ages. Aeon Shadow knew full well how important it was to be able to cultivate the 12 gates of immortality. He had only discovered this secret in the previous Chaos verse. He had destroyed his own cultivation and recultivated the 3 gates. Although he had remedied the situation in time, there had still been a trace of regret. It was this trace of regret that had caused him to end up like this. No. It wasn't just Aeon Shadow. It was the same for many other forbidden characters like him. It seems I was overthinking things. Aeon Shadow's aura gradually stabilized, and he regained his composure. He refused to believe that Yi Xian knew about this secret. However, Aeon Shadow was still puzzled. How had Yi Xian managed to reopen the gates of immortality? He could sense that Yi Xian's reopening of the gate of heaven was not because of the inverse character art, but how did he do it? For the first time, Eternal Shadow felt like he couldn't control Yi Xian. This feeling made him feel very uncomfortable, and he unconsciously raised his guard against Yi Xian. That's right, vigilance. These 2 words shouldn't have appeared in Eternal Shadow's heart, but they still did. There's something wrong with this kid. It seems that I can't underestimate him. The ancient shadow stared at Yi Xian through the endless void. His scarlet eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. Whoosh! A stream of turbid air burst out from Yi Xian's mouth, releasing the anger and resentment that he had been suppressing in his heart for a long time. He stood in the starry sky with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked calm, but no one knew how excited Yi Xian was, because he knew where the road ahead of him was, and how to cultivate the last 3 gates of heaven. Without destruction, there can be no construction. Reopening the gate of heaven and understanding the road ahead. A mysterious smile appeared at the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. He looked back in the direction of the untainted world, and a hint of sarcasm flashed across his eyes. Thank you for helping me, but I won't thank you. You and I will settle this score sooner or later. These words quietly sounded in Yi Xian's heart. He took a step forward, and the sea of stars surged under his feet. He headed toward the chaotic world. Central Territory, Butian Sect. Buzz. The starry sky compass rotated in the void, releasing rays of starlight, which converged into a starry sky blueprint in Yi Xian's eyes. Sect Master, do you know where this star path leads to? Yi Xian calmly examined the star map in the void, but he asked Sect Master Butian. Sect Master Butian was also staring at the map, and a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes from time to time. This star path was very old, and even he did not know where it led to. The chaotic universe was boundless. The so-called chaotic world was just the center of the chaotic universe, where countless creatures gathered to cultivate. However, in the whole chaotic universe, the chaotic world was just one of the many places. It did not mean that there were no creatures in other places besides the chaotic world. In the starry sky of the universe, there were always some ancient creatures. They lived in the starry sky of the universe and opened up many star roads. They also let the creatures in the chaotic world know that there were some ancient creatures in the chaotic universe that they were not familiar with. Although I don't know where this star path leads to, its starting point is in the Central Territory. However, this star path is very old. If you set off along this star path, there may be many dangers. Sect Master Butian pondered for a long time, and finally gave Yi Xian such an answer. It was not that Sect Master Butian was an alarmist. The chaotic universe was too vast, and there were countless hidden dangers. In particular, there were always some unknown and terrifying things on these star paths. The so-called star paths were paths opened up by some powerful and terrifying ancient creatures. They were also called ancient paths of the stars. These ancient paths of the stars led to some extremely mysterious places. These mysterious places might hide some shocking things, or they might involve an ancient creature's clan. Therefore, every ancient path of the stars had unknown dangers. If one set foot on these ancient paths of the stars, they must be prepared to face death. The chaotic universe was vast and boundless. Even the strongest of all time did not dare to say that they understood it. There were too many secrets hidden in it. At this moment, Yi Xian quietly examined the star path in the void. His expression was very calm, so calm that not the slightest ripple could be seen. Even though Sect Master Butian emphasized the dangers, Yi Xian only nodded. No matter what, he had to set foot on this ancient path of the stars. After all, this was his last chance to save Lu Bai. Even if Aeon Shadow was using him, he had to go. If he went, Lu Bai would still have a glimmer of hope. If he did not go, Lu Bai would truly have no hope. Therefore, Yi Xian had to grasp this glimmer of hope. However, before he set foot on this ancient path of the stars, he had to make proper arrangements for Fatso Huang and the others. He also had to make proper preparations before setting off. Yi Xian was not arrogant enough to set foot on this ancient path of the stars. He had to be fully prepared before he set foot on this ancient path of the stars. This was because Aeon Shadow had said that the person who could save Lu Bai was at the end of this star path of the stars. This person had to be a taboo character like Aeon Shadow. Chapter 1536. The Grand Central Territory was the leader of the 5 regions of chaos. The Grand Central Territory was filled with countless great sects and orthodoxies. The other 4 regions couldn't compare to it at all. There would be great experts establishing orthodoxies from time to time in the Grand Central Territory. Although this wasn't a common occurrence in the Grand Central Territory, it wasn't a rare occurrence either. Thus, the inhabitants of the Grand Central Territory were used to it. Especially in the Grand Central Territory, the successors of the great orthodoxies would cause a bloody storm every day in order to compete for the position of the ultimate seed. This attracted the attention of all living beings in the Grand Central Territory, so no one paid attention to the establishment of the orthodoxies. This was a competition among the young generation that attracted the attention of the world because it was very likely that the next ultimate expert would emerge from this generation. There were successors of the ultimate orthodoxies who swept through the world for 50,000 miles. Countless living beings died in their hands. The bloody scene created a supreme reputation for them. There were also successors of great sects who had terrifying battle constitutions and defeated the successors of the ultimate orthodoxies. They became famous all of a sudden and were classified as the ultimate seed. However, these people were only competing for the position of the ultimate seed. The truly terrifying ones were the heaven-defying monstrous existences. However, no one dared to provoke these monstrous existences because only death awaited those who provoked them. The great struggle of the world was a sea of blood. The young generation had thrown the entire Grand Central Territory into chaos. For the sake of the so-called ultimate seed and to become the ultimate expert of the next period, all sorts of bloody battles could be seen everywhere in the Grand Central Territory. However, no one knew that there was a person in the extreme north of the Grand Central Territory who only regarded these battles as a joke. He didn't pay any attention to them at all. This person was none other than Yi Xian. What was an ultimate seed? What was a heaven-defying monstrous existence? What was the ultimate expert of the next period? In Yi Xian's mind, all of this was nothing but a joke. This so-called struggle for fame and fortune was extremely foolish in his eyes. The truly powerful wouldn't bother with this kind of struggle. The strong were like the heavens and should reflect the heavens throughout the ages. Yi Xian's heart was as vast as the universe. His vision had never been limited to the Grand Central Territory, so he didn't care about these so-called young geniuses or heaven-defying geniuses. Perhaps there really was someone with a higher cultivation level than him among the strongest heaven-defying geniuses. However, a person's vision determined everything. Yi Xian's vision was the entire primal chaos universe. The so-called strongest was only a goal, and it definitely wasn't his end. Moreover, after Yi Xian discovered the secret of the immortal realm, he knew that he had embarked on a different path from others. Perhaps nothing could be seen from this path now, but when he opened all 12 heavenly gates, at that moment, he would ascend to the extreme. These young geniuses and heaven-defying monsters would not be able to compare to him. North Frost Heavenly Mountain. This was the northernmost part of the Grand Central Realm. Most of the land was covered by a blizzard. There weren't any systems within millions of miles because no one was willing to set up camp here. A heavenly palace hung in the clouds. This heavenly palace wasn't big. From time to time, one could see some figures shuttling through the heavenly palace. It gave off an inconspicuous feeling. Inside the heavenly palace, Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the void. Below him were Fatso Huang, Gu Beichen, and the 4 immortal realm experts. Below them were hundreds of Dao querying realm cultivators. Such a lineup was not worth mentioning in the Grand Central Territory. Even if they were established, they would only be third-rate sects with immortal realm experts. They could barely be considered a major sect. Sir, according to your instructions, all the members of the Northern Region Celestial Court are here. What should we do next? Fatso Huang bowed and asked. As soon as Fatso Huang finished speaking, everyone's eyes fell on Yi Xian. Everyone's eyes were filled with excitement. This was the Grand Central Territory, which was incomparable to the bitter cold of the Northern Region. With your cultivation, you can't compete with these major sections. Just cultivate here with peace of mind, Yi Xian said. Hearing Yi Xian's words, everyone was slightly disappointed. They thought that they could achieve something in the Grand Central Territory. They didn't expect Yi Xian to ask them to cultivate in peace. However, they knew the situation in the Grand Central Territory. Naturally, they had to obey Yi Xian's orders. Fatso Huang, is there any news about the matter I asked you to investigate? Yi Xian looked at Fatso Huang and asked. Fatso Huang's face was slightly red. He bowed to Yi Xian in shame and said, Sir, the extreme demonic heavenly palace has disappeared. We can't find any trace of them. Moreover, our men have just entered the Grand Central Territory. It's really difficult to find out anything about the extreme demonic heavenly palace. It's fine. Yi Xian wasn't disappointed at all. He was already prepared for this. He was just asking casually. Back then, he sent Yi Xuanma from the northern region to the Grand Central Territory. He wanted Yi Xuanma to join the extreme demonic heavenly palace. If Yi Xuanma could inherit the extreme demonic lord's heavenly heart of chaos, Yi Xuanma would replace the extreme demonic lord as the strongest in the history of the ninth epoch. Unfortunately, ever since Yi Xian sent Yi Xuanma to the Grand Central Territory, Yi Xuanma disappeared into thin air. Even Yi Xian couldn't sense his whereabouts. However, Yi Xian wasn't worried or disappointed. Yi Xuanma's disappearance was a good thing for Yi Xian. This also proved one thing. Yi Xuanma had joined the extreme demonic heavenly palace and might have inherited the extreme demonic lord's legacy. If Yi Xuanma could cultivate the extreme demonic power and attract the extreme demonic lord's heavenly heart of chaos, then everything Yi Xian had done before wouldn't be in vain. After all, Yi Xian had injected the extreme demonic power into Yi Xuanma's body. Moreover, Yi Xuanma had the mystical demon battle physique. With such excellent conditions, Yi Xuanma could definitely join the extreme demonic heavenly palace and might even attract the extreme demonic lord's heavenly heart of chaos. Yes, Yi Xian was very ambitious. Yi Xian wanted Yi Xuanma to become the strongest in history. After all, the extreme demonic lord had died in his hands. However, the heavenly heart of chaos had disappeared. Yi Xian wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. Although Yi Xian knew that Yi Xuanma hated him, so what if he hated him? In Yi Xian's eyes, Yi Xuanma was cultivated by him and was just a chess piece. If this chess piece had no value, then there was no harm in abandoning him. After putting aside the matter of Yi Xuanma, Yi Xian gave some instructions to Fatso Huang and the others. Although the northern region celestial court was nothing in the Grand Central Territory, these people could serve as his eyes and ears. When Yi Xian issued the orders, the entire northern region celestial court began to move. It was also at this moment that Gu Beichen reminded Yi Xian in a low voice, "Sir, San Huaimie has been waiting for you for a long time." San Huaimie. Yi Xian was slightly taken aback. Only then did he remember that this was the successor of the immortal heavenly palace. Back then, he had spared San Huaimie's life and even controlled him. San Huaimie had promised to give him the heavenly beast pills, but unfortunately, he had disappeared without a trace. He didn't expect San Huaimie to find him here. Let him in. Soon, under Yi Xian's instructions, Gu Beichen brought San Huaimie in. Chapter 1537. After so many years, San Huaimie had also stepped into the immortal realm and opened 2 heaven gates. However, when he saw Yi Xian, San Huaimie's face was slightly pale and his eyes were filled with endless bitterness. Back then, when he returned to the Grand Central region, he didn't dare to inform the Undying Heaven Palace about Yi Xian. He even broke his promise and didn't give the heavenly beast pill to Yi Xian. Instead, he swallowed it and stepped into the immortal realm. The heavenly beast pill was a divine pill that the Tsang clan's patriarch personally went to the ancestral land of the giant beasts to obtain for him. It was to allow him to step into the immortal realm and truly lead the Tsang clan to rise. Unfortunately, San Huaimie was once a genius and an extremely extraordinary figure. However, when the terrifying monstrous geniuses appeared one after another, he simply couldn't be compared to them. Even the Tsang clan's patriarch was completely disappointed in him and wasted a heavenly beast pill. San Huaimie was able to find this place because he had been paying attention to the northern region celestial court's movements. Because of the restriction placed by Yi Xian in his body, he thought that he could break free from Yi Xian's control as long as he stepped into the immortal realm. However, he was wrong. He came here to find Yi Xian. If he didn't remove the restriction in his body, he would definitely explode and die. Otherwise, how would he dare to meet Yi Xian? Please spare my life, Dao friend. The so-called dignity no longer existed. San Huaimie knelt down decisively and kowtowed to Yi Xian. His face was filled with bitterness. In the battle of the Great Tao, if one didn't advance, one would fall behind. In the battle of the younger generation, all of San Huaimie's pride was worn away. He was defeated by those terrifying young experts time and time again. Even the Undying Heaven Palace stripped him of his status as a saint. Even the Tsang clan he belonged to had given up on him. If he wasn't in the immortal realm, he would probably be spurned by everyone. He was once the successor of a supreme orthodoxy, yet he had fallen to such a state. Back then, there were a few people who were as famous as him. The temporal temple's Lu Yaoxing's cultivation had surpassed him by many folds. He was already listed as one of the supreme seeds. His temporal force swept across all directions and left him behind. Even the successors of the supreme orthodoxies who were weaker than him in the past were now much more powerful than him. This feeling of disparity finally destroyed his mentality, and he was completely reduced to a mediocre person. Humans either grew through trials or were destroyed through trials. It was obvious that San Huaimie had become the latter. He had also lost his pride, which was why he humbly prayed to Yi Xian for his life. He only wanted to live on. Looking at San Huaimie kneeling on the ground, Yi Xian's eyes were calm. The great waves wash away the sand, the survival of the fittest. You were once a genius, but unfortunately, you have lost the will to improve. San Huaimie's face was bitter. How could he not know his own situation? He raised his head to look at Yi Xian and said, "The world only knows about these so-called heaven-defying geniuses, but they don't know how strong you are. Even if my Tao heart is still firm, I will still be a corpse beneath your feet in the end." Zhang Huaimie paused for a moment. His bitter face turned sinister as if he had thought of something exciting. He murmured viciously, "No, not me. No, it's not just me. Those so-called strongest seeds, those so-called heaven-defying monsters, they don't know about your existence. But I believe that one day in the future, when they find out about your existence, they will be just like me. They will finally understand that they are just a pile of bones beneath your feet." Ha ha ha. At this moment, Zhang Huaimie was viciously cursing as if venting the depression in his heart. He seemed to have gone crazy as if he had seen a certain scene in the future. Those so-called supreme seeds and heaven-defying geniuses believed that they were invincible among the younger generation. As long as the next Yuanhui began, they would be able to compete for the title of eternal champion. However, when Yi Xian appeared, he would shatter their beautiful dreams and ruthlessly crush their pride. He would trample it beneath his feet. Zhang Huaimie's smile became even more vicious. Even Yi Xian was slightly surprised by this smile. He felt that Zhang Huaimie's mind had become extremely twisted. "Yi Daoyu, no. Sir Yi, please spare my life. I, Zhang Huaimie, will be your dog." Zhang Huaimie kept on kowtowing towards Yi Xian. He had long abandoned his so-called dignity. If he couldn't become an eternal champion and didn't have the qualifications to compete, then there was no need for him to be conflicted. It was better to follow this man. Perhaps this was the best result. Zhang Huaimie didn't know if Yi Xian could become an eternal champion in the next Yuanhui or not, but he wanted to see one thing happen. This was to humiliate the supreme seeds who had defeated him before as well as the heaven-defying geniuses who looked down on him. He wanted to personally see Yi Xian trample them beneath his feet. Only then would he be able to vent his anger. Yi Xian lightly nodded his head as he looked at Zhang Huaimie, whose mind had already warped. "Alright, since you're willing to be my dog, then I'll take you in. However, being my dog requires a lot of ability. What can you do for me?" Zhang Huaimie's mind might be twisted, but he wasn't stupid. His eyes were dark as he kowtowed towards Yi Xian. "I am the descendant of the Immortal Heaven Palace. I can tell you anything I know about the palace. Also, I purposely stole a star map from the Zhang clan to give to you. This is enough to show my loyalty to you." Zhang Huaimie was indeed a ruthless person, especially his twisted mind. He didn't care about his own family and even betrayed his own clan. A star map appeared in Zhang Huaimie's hands before he respectfully offered it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian casually took the star map in his hand. He didn't care too much at first, but when Yi Xian's gaze fell on the star map, his breath stopped and his eyes froze. Boom! An extremely terrifying aura erupted from Yi Xian's body. Terrifying heaven-burying divine light was in chaos. Yi Xian directly lifted Zhang Huaimie up and grabbed his throat. His eyes were frightening. "Tell me the origin of this star map. What use does this star map have?" Zhang Huaimie was shocked by Yi Xian's sudden burst of killing intent. He struggled in Yi Xian's hand and quickly explained, "This star map is an ancient artifact of my Zhang clan. It is a star path that leads to the ancestral land of the space beasts." Bang! After Zhang Huaimie finished speaking, Yi Xian casually threw the star map to the ground. Yi Xian held the star map and looked at it with rapt attention. From time to time, his eyes would flash with bewilderment. Similar. Too similar. Although this star map was different from the ancient star path given to him by Eternal Shadow, they were generally the same in many areas. The only difference was that the star map that Zhang Huaimie Jin had given him did not indicate the final destination, which was the location of the forbidden figure. In that case, this star map is a star path that leads to the ancestral land of the space beasts. Yi Xian muttered with a deep gaze. Chapter 1538. This star map leads to the ancestral land of the space beasts. Zhang Huaimie hastily answered. He was truly frightened by Yi Xian. He had a feeling that Yi Xian was going to kill him. However, Zhang Huaimie was extremely puzzled. Why would Yi Xian be so excited after seeing this star map? One must know that the space beasts were an extremely terrifying race. Why would Yi Xian care so much about it? Just as Zhang Huaimie was unsure, Yi Xian's gaze once again landed on him. The corner of his mouth curled into a strange smile. You said that this star map is an ancestral item of your Tsang clan. Back then, I remember you telling me that your Tsang clan patriarch once went to the depths of the starry skies to seek a heavenly beast pill for you to break through to the immortal realm. I presume this heavenly beast pill came from the space beasts. Yi Xian said indifferently. Mr. Yi. You. What do you want to do? Zhang Huaimie wasn't stupid. Although he had lost his drive to improve, he was still an extremely intelligent person. Furthermore, according to his understanding of Yi Xian was definitely not a good person. What do I want to do? Yi Xian smiled. However, his smile was very sinister. It was so sinister that it made Zhang Huaimie's hair stand on end. A layer of sweat seeped out from his back. His heart trembled fiercely as an extremely bad feeling emerged. I wish to visit the Tsang clan as a guest. I wonder if your Tsang clan will welcome me. Yi Xian said with a sidelong glance. Guest? Zhang Huaimie's complexion instantly turned pale. He waved his hand repeatedly to express his refusal. Mr. Yi, you mustn't. This star map is just a copy of mine. If you really go to my Tsang clan and my patriarch finds out about this, he will definitely not let me off. Betraying the clan and stealing the ancestral item was enough for Zhang Huaimie to die. How could he dare to bring Yi Xian to the Tsang clan? You are really not obedient. If you are not obedient, how can you be my dog? Yi Xian appeared to be very unhappy. He frowned and slightly raised his hand. A terrifying power appeared in the void, causing Zhang Huaimie to retreat in horror. Yi. Mr. Yi. I promise you. Zhang Huaimie was truly a despicable person. In an extremely short period of time, he had determined the pros and cons. If he didn't agree to Yi Xian's request, then he would die here today before the Tsang clan could kill him. That's a good boy. Yi Xian smiled warmly. He patted Zhang Huaimie's shoulder in praise, but this caused Zhang Huaimie to break out in a cold sweat. Let's go. Yi Xian said indifferently. He picked up Zhang Huaimie and left the heavenly palace. Under the gazes of Fatso Huang and the others, Yi Xian disappeared into the sky with Zhang Huaimie. Watching Yi Xian's departing figure, Fatso Huang sighed. Now that the Mr. has left, I wonder when we will meet again. We will eventually meet again. I believe that the Mr. will ascend to the peak of the primal chaos sooner or later, Gu Beichen said solemnly. Alright, let's finish the mission the Mr. gave us as soon as possible. If we can't even handle such a small matter, wouldn't we become a joke to the Mr.? Fatso Huang added. The great earth-flying song was vast and boundless. The Tsang clan wasn't famous in the central region. It couldn't compare to some of the major sects and orthodoxies. However, the Tsang clan had a long history and had existed for several yuan hui. Every era would produce some cultivation geniuses. If a major clan wanted to rise, they had to have great geniuses. As the saying goes, when a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs will ascend to the heavens. In the 10th yuan hui, the Tsang clan had placed all their hopes on Zhang Huaimie. They had even used their ancestral star chart for him to break through to the immortal realm. All for the sake of obtaining a heavenly beast pill for him. Unfortunately, Zhang Huaimie was too disappointing. When the dazzling geniuses appeared, Zhang Huaimie was completely inferior. He wasn't a match for these monstrous geniuses and was reduced to a mediocre person. However, the Tsang clan didn't give up. The 10th Yuanhui had only passed for 400 million years. There was still a long time before it ended. They could completely nurture a new person who could lead the Tsang clan to rise again before the 10th Yuanhui ended. And the Tsang clan was doing so. Every 10,000 years, they would select a genius. Tsang clan's important grounds. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter. In front of a valley, a stone tablet was rooted in the ground. 8 large words were engraved on the tablet. Yi Xian and Tsang Huaimie were standing there. This is your Tsang clan. Yi Xian looked at the stone tablet and asked. Yes, yes. Tsang Huaimie's face was pale. At this moment, he was trembling with fear. He didn't know what Yi Xian wanted to do here. With the Tsang clan's foundation, facing such a terrifying person might be a great calamity. The Tsang clan had less than 10,000 people. They had always been living in seclusion in this valley. There were only a few immortal realm experts. Most of them were Dao querying realm experts and disciples with lower cultivation base. There was only one true expert, and that was the Tsang clan leader. This Tsang clan leader was extraordinary. He was a terrifying figure who had opened the 5th heaven gate. Moreover, he possessed the Tai Tsang battle body. Even if he faced someone who had opened the 6th heaven gate, he wouldn't be any weaker. He could even kill them. The Tai Tsang battle body was a superior battle body. Although it wasn't as terrifying as the supreme battle body, nor was it as mysterious as the variant battle body, it was extremely fast and its attacking methods were unpredictable. Therefore, the Tsang clan leader was the pillar supporting the Tsang clan. If he fell, the Tsang clan would also fall. And the person Tsang Huaimie feared the most was this Tsang clan leader. Who is making a ruckus in my Tsang clan? Suddenly, a berating voice was heard. The stone tablet flickered violently and 2 Tsang clan disciples walked out. But when they saw Tsang Huaimie, they were startled. But they still bowed to greet him. So it's Elder Huaimie. Elder, why have you returned to the clan instead of cultivating in the undying heaven palace? The 2 Tsang clan disciples didn't have high cultivation bases. According to seniority, they were Tsang Huaimie's juniors. But their attitude wasn't respectful at all. Instead, there was a trace of contempt for Tsang Huaimie. Tsang Huaimie seemed to be used to the attitude of the Tsang clan. He pretended to be calm and said, "Go and inform the clan leader that a guest has come to visit our Tsang clan. Ask the clan leader to personally welcome him." A guest? One of the disciples frowned and looked at Yi Xian from the corner of his eyes. Then he said indifferently, "Elder Huaimie, have you forgotten the teachings of our clan's ancestors? Our Tsang clan doesn't accept guests. Elder, have you asked the clan leader for permission to bring someone to our Tsang clan?" The 2 disciples spoke one after another. Their words gradually became sharp. Even if Tsang Huaimie was in the immortal realm, they didn't seem to care about him at all. In fact, the 2 Tsang clan disciples couldn't be blamed. The entire clan had placed their hopes on Tsang Huaimie. The Tsang clan had given the best resources to Tsang Huaimie. But in the end, he was reduced to mediocrity. How could the Tsang clan not be angry? How dare you speak to me like that? Why aren't you going to inform the clan leader? Chapter 1539. Being mocked by 2 disciples, no matter how good Tsang Huaimie could tolerate it, his face was flushed red. He could not wait to slap the 2 of them to death. If you wish to bring outsiders into our Tsang family, please invite Elder Huaimie, A.M. Before the disciple could finish his words, a loud explosion rang out, and the disciple directly turned into a bloody mist that filled the sky and dissipated. His entire person was dead to the point that he couldn't be more dead. You sure talk a lot. Yi Xian waved his hand as though he had just done something casual. But in the eyes of Tsang Huaimie and the remaining Tsang family disciple, Yi Xian's actions were absolutely horrifying. Mr. You, Zhang Huaimie's face was so pale that he could not speak. Even though he had guessed that Yi Xian did not come with good intentions, he had not expected Yi Xian to be so violent as to kill someone of their Zhang family. Zhang Huaimie, how dare you bring outsiders to kill our disciples? Our family head will not let you off. The remaining Zhang family disciple roared out in anger. He darted into the stone tablet swiftly, and one could faintly hear his enraged cries. Let's go. That'll save us a lot of trouble. Yi Xian strode towards the stone tablet and waved his hand casually at Zhang Huaimie. This. Looking at the back view of Yi Xian, Zhang Huaimie was bitter to the extreme. Even if he could survive this time around, the Zhang family would definitely not let him off. But at the next moment, Zhang Huaimie's pale face turned sinister. If Yi Xian could destroy the entire Zhang family, he would have nothing to fear anymore. At the thought of this, Zhang Huaimie followed Yi Xian into the ancestral grounds of the Zhang family. He was the one who killed Little Fool. Zhang Huaimie was the one who lured him here. The moment Yi Xian entered the Zhang family, a furious roar rang out. Hundreds of beams of light shot out, accompanied by curses. Chi! 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 All kinds of spells whistled through the air, accompanied by the terrifying sound of clashing blades and swords, all of them aimed at Yi Xian and Zhang Huai. A bunch of trash. Yi Xian didn't come here to deal with these trash. He didn't have time to waste here. He threw out a slap that crushed the sky. Hundreds of figures were sent flying, accompanied by tragic screams. Kill! Although the people who were sent flying were injured, they weren't seriously injured. They were furious as they charged towards Yi Xian and Zhang Huaimie. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Yi Xian frowned. He had already shown mercy. Since these pieces of trash wanted to die, there was no need for him to be courteous. He would just send them on their way. Rumble. The Dharma Eye of Destruction was activated, and its terrifying eyes rotated. The space around them was distorted to the extreme. The figures that were charging at Yi Xian were all reduced to a mist of blood and dissipated. I'll fight you to the death. Suddenly, several figures attacked. They actually chose to self-detonate, intending to die together with Yi Xian. This is really troublesome. Bang! Yi Xian threw out a slap. He didn't even give these people a chance to self-detonate. They were all smashed into pieces, and he strode towards the Zhang family. Ferocious and decisive. In merely 3 breaths of time, hundreds of Zhang family members died in the hands of Yi Xian. Not only did Zhang Huaimie not feel any heartache when he saw this, he even hoped that Yi Xian would annihilate the entire Zhang family. Bastard, my Zhang family will fight you to the death. Suddenly, an Immortal Realm expert attacked. Obviously, it was an elder of the Zhang family, and his words were filled with rage. But unfortunately, this Immortal Realm elder had only opened the second heaven gate. He wasn't worth mentioning to Yi Xian. Bang! He was slapped to the ground without the slightest hesitation. He hadn't even made a move against Yi Xian when he fell beneath Yi Xian's feet like a dead dog, and he ceaselessly spat out mouthful after mouthful of blood. Even though this strike didn't take his life, it still caused him to suffer a heavy injury. Kill! The heavy and rapid sound of a bell was ceaselessly being struck. A large amount of Zhang family members were rushing over swiftly, and it was even accompanied by extremely chaotic shouts. But right at this moment, a heavy voice suddenly resounded, and it instantly stopped the Zhang family members from fighting desperately. Then, a figure walked out from within the Zhang family. Young friend, you've only opened the first heaven gate, yet your combat strength is already so heaven-defying. May I know which heaven-defying monster you are? A member of the Zhang family. He wore black clothes, and his jet black hair was mixed with some white hair. He seemed to be steady like a mountain, and even though he didn't emanate a powerful aura, his eyes were extremely heavy. At this moment, his gaze descended onto Yi Xian. "You're the Tsang family's patriarch?" Yi Xian slightly examined this person, and his eyes slightly moved. With just the observation of the law eye of annihilation, Yi Xian discovered that the Tsang family's patriarch wasn't simple. He actually gave him an extremely great pressure. However, this kind of pressure was only caused by cultivation. If they were to really fight to the death, then the truth would speak for itself. "I'm Tsang Haotian, the Tsang family's patriarch. Young friend, you're a heaven-defying monster. May I know why you've come to my Tsang family and even killed my clan's disciples?" The Tsang family's patriarch said in a deep voice. Obviously, Tsang Haotian had misunderstood. He had already determined that Yi Xian was one of those heaven-defying monsters. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to have such terrifying combat strength. "Patriarch, you've misunderstood. I'm not a heaven-defying monster. As for killing these people, it's because they attacked me," Yi Xian said indifferently. Facing Yi Xian's sophistry, Tsang Haotian was inwardly enraged. However, he didn't reprimand him because he was afraid of Yi Xian's cultivation and background. Although Yi Xian didn't admit that he was a heaven-defying monster, his cultivation base could only be nurtured by a supreme orthodoxy. Even if Yi Xian wasn't from a supreme orthodoxy, the Tsang family couldn't afford to offend him with such terrifying aptitude. "Patriarch, it's Tsang Huaimie. It's Tsang Huaimie who brought this person to kill little fool. You must seek justice for us," the Tsang family's disciples who escaped earlier cried out. "Stand down." Tsang Haotian frowned. How could he not know that it was Yi Xian who attacked first? However, his Tsang family couldn't afford to offend this person. After all, they didn't have someone like Yi Xian in their Tsang family. "Little friend, why have you come to my Tsang family? Just tell me your purpose. Moreover, to be able to make Tsang Huaimie betray my family, this proves that you're not an ordinary person." Tsang Haotian understood the situation very well and went straight to the point with Yi Xian. "I like smart people, and you're indeed very smart. Then, I'll be frank." As Yi Xian spoke up to hear, he lightly smiled and said, "I heard that the Tsang clan has a star map that can lead to the ancestral land of the space beasts. I just want to borrow it and ask about the space beasts." Tsang Huaimie. At the mention of the star map, Tsang Haotian could no longer control his anger. He suddenly looked at Tsang Huaimie and the 5 heavenly gates opened abruptly, releasing an extremely terrifying power. Chapter 1540. Dang! 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 Tsang Huaimie took a few steps back. His face was filled with fear. Facing the Tsang clan head's rage, his heart was filled with fear. He almost wanted to hide behind Yi Xian's back. "I must have been blind to think that a scoundrel like you would lead my Tsang clan to rise." Tsang Haotian's eyes were bloodshot. His heart was filled with regret and disappointment towards Tsang Huaimie. After the initial shock, Tsang Huaimie gradually calmed down. His face was slightly flushed with shame. But in the next moment, his face turned ruthless. He stood out once again and looked at the Tsang clan head with a ferocious expression. "Clan head, what's the use of saying all this? As the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. I, Tsang Huaimie, am indeed a vile person. I am indeed useless. But are you any better? If it wasn't for you pressuring me and telling me that I must become the strongest throughout the ages, how could I have become like this today? It doesn't matter if you hate me or if you're angry. You brought this upon yourself. The so-called Tsang clan is nothing but a joke." Tsang Huaimie roared hysterically. He was venting the anger and resentment he had accumulated over the years. Ever since Tsang Huaimie could remember, he had been entrusted with important tasks. He was the hope of the Tsang clan. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. No matter when or where, his only mission was to cultivate. From the Tsang clan's patriarch to his clansmen, everyone had high hopes for him. However, the endless cultivation and the endless pressure had finally crushed him. When Tsang Huaimie finally broke down, his temperament was completely distorted. He was no longer the genius of the past. He was no longer a so-called heaven's pride. A person would either grow through tempering or be destroyed through tempering. Tsang Huaimie had clearly become the latter. But all of this was caused by the Tsang clan. Indeed, he was a member of the Tsang clan. Even his cultivation was given to him by the Tsang clan. However, Tsang Huaimie also hated the Tsang clan, and hated Tsang Haotian even more. If it wasn't for the pressure given to him by the Tsang clan, even if he couldn't become an eternal paragon, he would definitely become a half-step paragon and be willing to truly protect his clan. However, when his mentality collapsed, he was defeated time and time again at the hands of the other members of the younger generation, and was wantonly ridiculed by his clansmen. His heart had already turned black, and he hated the Tsang clan to death, so much so that he wanted to destroy the Tsang clan. "I'll kill you, you traitor!" Rumble. The 5 heavenly gates and the Taishu combat form. Tsang Haotian's robes fluttered even though there was no wind. The terrifying Taishu divine light exploded the void between heaven and earth. Streaks of Taishu martial arts that were like thunderbolts exploded with infinite power. Boom! An attack from the higher void stage destroyed everything in its path. It carried with it Tsang Haotian's rage as it charged towards Tsang Huaimie. "Sir, save me!" Tsang Huaimie cried out in fear. He had only opened the second heaven gate and was unable to withstand Tsang Haotian's furious strike. At this moment, he could only ask Yi Xian for help. "Patriarch, what are you doing?" Boom! Yi Xian's primordial chaos palm immediately formed a Yuan Tian grand technique in front of Tsang Huaimie, blocking Tsang Haotian's strike. This also made Tsang Huaimie sigh in relief. He almost thought that he was going to die here. What a heaven-defying monster! I don't care who you are, or which orthodoxy is behind you. Today, I'll have a taste of how strong a heaven-defying monster is. How dare you bully my Tsang clan? Tsang Haotian roared again and again. The 5 great heavenly gates illuminated the void of heaven and earth, and the great void battle body emitted a terrifying light. His entire body was like the heavens and earth as he charged towards Yi Xian. Endless great techniques were unleashed, accompanied by the great void divine light. 5 heavenly gates. Interesting. Let me see how strong you are. Boom! Yi Xian's body was like the heavens, crushing everything. When he moved, it was terrifying. Every step he took caused the void to shatter. The heaven-burying divine light Tong Tian covered the ground. Similarly, various great techniques and secret techniques were unleashed. They were not inferior to Tsang Haotian at all. Bang! 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 Like streams of light streaking across heaven and earth, like billions of stars twinkling. The speed of the two was so fast that it was impossible for others to catch sight of them. Not only were there collisions of physical bodies, there were also collisions of great techniques and secret techniques. Every single strike they unleashed was able to destroy the void between heaven and earth. Even the Tsang clan was left in ruins. Come with me if you have what it takes. Boom! With a single strike, the two of them separated instantly. Tsang Haotian roared with hatred as he soared into the sky and entered the chaotic starry skies. He did not wish to destroy the Tsang clan and wanted to fight with Yi Xian in the starry skies. What an ignorant fella! Yi Xian muttered playfully. Taking a step forward, he disappeared from where he was as he followed Tsang Haotian into the starry skies. As the two of them left, Tsang Huaimie was clearly restless. A large number of Tsang clan members were looking at him with hatred. If looks could kill, Tsang Huaimie knew that he would have been sliced into pieces. You guys don't have to look at me with such hatred. This is all because of you guys. Since he had already come this far, Zhang Huaimian no longer had any misgivings. He might as well vent the anger and resentment in his heart. You traitor! How dare you bring an outsider to kill my Tsang clan members? When the clan head exterminates the outsider, he will definitely roast you in the great void divine flames for all eternity. You will never be able to reincarnate. Traitor, your death is not to be regretted. To think that my Tsang clan viewed you as our hope. How can you face our clan head? All sorts of angry voices rang out as they launched a crusade against Zhang Huaimia. If not for the fact that Zhang Huaimia was in the immortal realm, they would have already surrounded and killed him. All of you trash will never know how terrifying Yi Xian is. He will not die. The one who will die will definitely be the clan head. I was not wrong to follow him. So what if you guys treat me as a traitor? You guys will never understand how terrifying he is. He will definitely ascend to the peak. What heaven-defying monster! What ultimate seed! All of you are merely stepping stones beneath his feet. Did you guys see? Are you all blind? He has already broken away from the scope of the younger generation and is currently fighting with the clan head. The clan head has the great void combat physique that has opened 5 heaven gates. Zhang Huaimia roared madly as he vented the emotions in his heart. He had blind confidence in Yi Xian. It was not because he was loyal to Yi Xian, but because he knew a lot about Yi Xian's deeds. A person who could endlessly tangle with an ultimate expert and still survive. A person who disdained to fight with the younger generation. A person who dared to fight with the older generation. How could such a person be ordinary? An ultimate expert. Zhang Huaimia believed that Yi Xian would be an ultimate expert in the next Yuan Hui. Ever since he came to the Tsang clan and saw Yi Xian mercilessly exterminating his clansmen, he firmly believed in this belief. A person's cultivation might be important, but one's temperament was even more important. If one did not have a ruthless and fearless heart, then one would not be able to accomplish anything. Chapter 1541. Zhang Huaimia was the best example. It wasn't that Zhang Huaimia didn't lack talent, nor did he lack a superior battle physique. He was fully qualified to compete for the title of strongest of all ages. However, his temperament was too weak. Just this point alone made him a loser. Ever since he was the first successor of a paramount orthodoxy, he had been arrogant and condescending. Among the successors of paramount orthodoxies, he was even able to fight evenly with the successor of the temporal temple, Lu Yaoxing. Lu Yaoxing had always viewed him as a formidable opponent. However, as time passed, Lu Yaoxing surpassed him and defeated him. Even those who were weaker than him defeated him time and time again. The mockery of his enemies, the abandonment of the undying heaven palace, and the disdain and disappointment of his clansmen. These external factors began to affect him, truly distorting his temperament and reducing him to mediocrity. He, Zhang Huaimia, was no longer the genius he once was. He was no longer the successor of the undying heaven palace. He had even been abandoned by the Tsang clan. All these setbacks had caused him to begin to fall. His heart had become twisted and dark to the extreme. He no longer had the chance to become the strongest throughout history, let alone compete with the younger generation. Yi Xian was different. Yi Xian's style and methods proved that Yi Xian's temperament was as firm as a boulder. He was decisive and merciless. He dared to confront a strongest throughout the ages and kill without any hesitation. It didn't matter who your backer was. There was no one in the world that Yi Xian didn't dare to kill. Moreover, Yi Xian was extremely shrewd. All the signs pointed to Yi Xian's impeccable character. If even someone like Yi Xian couldn't become a strongest throughout the ages, then Zhang Huaimia didn't believe that anyone in the world could surpass Yi Xian. A strongest seed. A heaven-defying monster. What a joke, it was all a joke. It wasn't that Song Huaimia hadn't seen these people before. Some were refined and courteous, some were lofty, some were murderous, and some were arrogant. However, this was nothing more than a facade. It was just a posture that they put on themselves. Yi Xian, on the other hand, was different. He would do anything to achieve his goals. His goals were all very simple. Get stronger, get stronger, get stronger. This was an invincible belief, and it was also something that Song Huaimia saw. That's why he chose to be Yi Xian's dog. It was because he believed that even though he couldn't become the strongest throughout the ages, as long as he followed Yi Xian, he could become an existence that was second only to one person. Shameless. Traitor. You deserve 10,000 deaths. In the midst of the condemnation, Song Huaimia sneered again and again. He no longer had any feelings for the Tsang clan and hoped that Yi Xian could kill the Tsang clan patriarch and come back to destroy the entire Tsang clan. 3 days later. Boom! 2 streams of light descended from the starry sky. Following a loud explosion, Yi Xian and Song Haotian appeared at the same time. However, the two of them exuded an extremely terrifying aura. Their bodies were stained with blood, as if each of them had suffered different kinds of injuries. Mr. Yi. Looking at Yi Xian's reappearance, Song Huaimia was overjoyed. Even though he saw that Song Haotian was fine, Yi Xian's state was still calm. Clearly, he hadn't fallen into a disadvantageous position. At this moment, Song Haotian's expression was grave and stern. He didn't speak or move as he stared at Yi Xian. No one knew what he was thinking and no one knew the outcome of this battle. On the other hand, Yi Xian was smiling. His smile was very deep, so deep that no one could understand him. It gave off an extremely mysterious feeling. Tsang clan patriarch, I'll give you one more chance. It'll be great if you agree. If you don't, then I'll slaughter all of your clansmen one by one. When that time comes, the Tsang clan will no longer exist in this world. Yi Xian smiled. You. Song Haotian roared with hatred. However, he couldn't say anything after that. He could only look at Yi Xian with an extremely grave expression. There was also a fear that he had never shown before. In the previous battle, even though he didn't lose, he suffered a great loss. It wasn't that he wasn't a match for Yi Xian, but that his various great techniques and great void combat body couldn't harm Yi Xian at all. Tell me, who are you? You're definitely not one of those heaven-defying monsters. Even a heaven-defying monster wouldn't be as strong as you. Song Haotian questioned gloomily. He wasn't praising Yi Xian. Instead, he was stating a fact. He could fight against an immortal realm expert who had opened the 6th heaven gate, but Yi Xian actually made him suffer a loss. Even a heaven-defying monster wouldn't have such ability. It wasn't that Song Haotian was arrogant. His great void combat body had endless mysteries. Coupled with his cultivation that had opened the 5th heaven gate, unless a 3rd stage immortal realm expert could crush him, he wouldn't fear anyone. Who I am isn't important. What's important is your choice. Do you agree or not? Boom. The 5 fingers were like the sky. The sky exploded. The hand of heaven covered the sky and was already pressing down on the Tsang clan. This was Yi Xian's cold-blooded and merciless method. As long as Song Haotian didn't agree to his request, he would immediately destroy the Tsang clan and turn this place into a scorched land. The 6 desires were merciless and the heaven and earth were heartless. In order to achieve what he wanted, there was nothing that Yi Xian didn't dare to do. It didn't matter if one said that he was using the Tsang clan to threaten Song Haotian or that he was shameless. As long as he could achieve his goal, Yi Xian didn't care what others thought of him. Those who achieved great things didn't care about trifles. Yi Xian never thought of himself as a bloodthirsty person. However, he knew that killing was a very good method that could solve a lot of problems for him. And that was enough for him. You're going too far. Song Haotian roared. He didn't expect Yi Xian to be so shameless as to use his clan to threaten him. However, such a shameless method was indeed very useful and simple. It really made Song Haotian hesitate. I'll count to 3. If you don't agree after 3, you know the result. Yi Xian smiled faintly and said, 1, 2, 3. Boom. Yi Xian didn't waste any time. He didn't give Song Haotian any time to think. His 5 fingers seemed to be holding up the ancient sky as the hand of the heavens that blotted out the sky and covered the sun descended in a terrifying manner. Rumble. The heaven and earth trembled and the earth cracked. Many Tsang clan members cried out in fear because Yi Xian's unparalleled technique was too terrifying. It would really take their lives. I agree. At this critical moment, Song Haotian roared in anger. He was extremely sullen. Whing. The void rippled and the ripples spread out. The hand of heaven disappeared and the heaven and earth returned to normal. The killing intent from before no longer existed. Only Yi Xian's smile hung on his face. That's right. If the patriarch had made this choice earlier, there wouldn't be so much trouble. Yi Xian strode forward and patted Song Haotian's shoulder affectionately. He even put his arm around Song Haotian's shoulder and walked into the Tsang clan. It was as if they were close friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. Chapter 1542. Before I give you this star chart, I have to warn you about something. In the Tsang clan, Song Haotian held an ancient and resplendent star chart in his hand, but his face was solemn and hesitant. Buzz. Yi Xian stretched out his 5 fingers and directly sucked the star chart over. He didn't care about Song Haotian's gloomy face at all and carefully examined the star chart in his hand. Yes, it's exactly the same. Yi Xian only took a casual glance and was finally able to confirm that the Tsang clan star map was indeed the same as the star map recorded on the starry compass given to him by the Eternal Shadow. However, the destination marked on the star compass didn't appear on the star chart of the Tsang clan. The star chart had already been taken away by Yi Xian, and Song Haotian knew that there was nothing he could do. He gradually calmed his mind and said, the Star Beast clan seems to have yet to develop intelligence, but it's a big mistake. In the ancestral land of the Star Beasts, there are many intelligent creatures. They are the true core of the Star Beast clan and are also known as the King Beast bloodline. This star chart can allow you to reach the ancestral land of the Star Beasts, but the Star Beasts don't like outsiders. If you really go there, I'm afraid you won't be able to come out. So I hope you can consider it carefully. Song Haotian reminded. You're saying that I will die in the ancestral land of the Star Beasts? Yi Xian glanced at Song Haotian and asked. You can think of it that way. Song Haotian said. If I remember correctly, you went here not long ago to ask for a heavenly beast pill for Tsang Huaimia, right? Yi Xian said indifferently. This is what I want to tell you next. Song Haotian said slowly and began to explain the origin of the star chart. Even though the Tsang clan was small in number and was even a clan that was unknown, its history was extremely long, and it had existed for an entire few periods. Every single patriarch of the Tsang clan was an expert at the Eternal Realm. During the 9th epoch, a patriarch had saved a starry sky beast by chance, and this starry sky beast had an extraordinary background. It was the royal bloodline of the Starry Sky Beast clan. It was also because of this good karma that the Starry Sky Beast clan had given the star path that led to their ancestral land to this patriarch from all those years ago. Moreover, they'd even agreed to a condition of the Tsang clan. So long as a descendant came to the Starry Sky Beast clan with this star map, they'd unconditionally agree to a request of that descendant. In order for Tsang Huaimia to step into the immortal realm as soon as possible and be able to compete with the supreme seeds, Song Haotian brought this star map to the Space Beast clan and exchanged it for a heavenly beast pill. However, Song Haotian was also warned by the Astral Beast clan that the favor from back then had been repaid. From now on, the Song clan was not allowed to take even half a step into the ancestral land of the Astral Beasts, nor was he allowed to give this star chart to anyone. Otherwise, the Astral Beast clan would exterminate the entire Song clan. It was because of this reason that Song Haotian explained the reason to Yi Xian. If Yi Xian really intended to go to the Astral Beast clan, it would definitely bring disaster to the Song clan. Song Haotian didn't want to see such an outcome. All along, Song Haotian had thought that the strongest orthodoxies were already very terrifying, and even the strongest of all time behind them. However, it wasn't until he went to the Astral Beast clan that he realized that his horizons were too narrow. The terror of the Astral Beast clan was deeply ingrained in his heart. Listening to Song Haotian's narration, Yi Xian could feel his fear even more. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. Even Song Haotian, who had opened the 5 great sky gates, was so fearful of the Astral Beast clan. This also showed how terrifying this ancient clan was. The physical bodies of the Astral Beasts are terrifyingly strong. Their bodies are the best weapons. Even cultivators of the same level can't break through them. Moreover, the Astral Beasts that possess the king's bloodline have unimaginable spiritual powers. I can tell you this. Every Astral Beast that possesses the king's bloodline is comparable to the strongest seeds. Moreover, they can completely crush these so-called strongest seeds. Song Haotian said a lot, and his body unconsciously emitted a sense of fear. Are you done? Yi Xian looked at Song Haotian indifferently, as if he didn't take his words to heart. You really want to go to the ancestral land of the Astral Beasts? Looking at Yi Xian's indifferent attitude, Song Haotian's face turned gloomy. He had already described how terrifying the Astral Beast clan was. He didn't expect Yi Xian to still insist on going. You're wrong. I'm not the one who wants to go to the ancestral land of the Astral Beasts. You're the one who wants to accompany me. Yi Xian grinned. What? Song Haotian was startled, and his face turned extremely ugly. At the very least, you've been to the ancestral land of the Astral Beasts. With you as a guide, it will save me a lot of trouble. You accompanying me is the best choice. Yi Xian smiled. Are you crazy? We'll die. Song Haotian suddenly roared. It wasn't that he was afraid of death, but if he died, the Song clan would collapse. Furthermore, he didn't want to accompany Yi Xian. To the Song clan, it would be a devastating blow. Ha ha ha. Yi Xian smiled, but his smile was very cruel. He turned around and walked towards the outside world. His cruel voice rang in Song Haotian's ears. I'm leaving your Song clan now. If you don't follow me, I'll destroy your clan. A threat. A naked threat, an undisguised threat. Yi Xian had Song Haotian under his control. His greatest weakness was the Song clan. As long as he had the Song clan's life in his hands, Song Haotian would be at his mercy. As expected. Following Yi Xian's departure, Song Haotian's face was gloomy and uncertain. In just a breath's time, he made a decision to follow Yi Xian and leave the Song clan. He still couldn't give up on the Song clan, so he chose to compromise with Yi Xian. Outside the valley, Song Huaimia's face was full of smiles as he glanced at Song Haotian. There was an indescribable pride in his eyes. So what if you're the patriarch? Aren't you being controlled by Yi Xian just like me? How are you any better than me? Perhaps sensing the deep meaning in Song Huaimia's gaze, Song Haotian glared at Song Huaimia and remained silent. Song Huaimia, since you're from the Undying Heaven Palace, return to the Undying Heaven Palace. When I return to the Grand Central Region, I'll summon you. Yi Xian said indifferently. Yes, Mr. Yi. Song Huaimia's performance was very humble and respectful. He bowed to Yi Xian with a face full of sincerity. Whether he was pretending or not, it didn't matter to Yi Xian. Because in Yi Xian's eyes, he was just a dog that would tear apart enemies he didn't like. Oh right, there's one more thing you need to pay attention to for me. Before leaving, Yi Xian seemed to have thought of something and warned Song Huaimia again. Extreme Devil Heavenly Palace. Song Huaimia was clearly stunned. However, he didn't dare to neglect Yi Xian's orders. He nodded heavily and promised Yi Xian that he would find out the whereabouts of the Extreme Devil Heavenly Palace. Chapter 1543. The Chaotic Universe, the Vast Starry Sky. In this mysterious and vast universe, there were too many things that could not be explained, and there were also many places where living beings could not set foot. No one could say that they understood the chaotic universe, be it mortals or the strongest throughout the ages. From the day the chaotic universe came into existence, all living beings were included in it. Perhaps only those forbidden figures could know some of the true mysteries of the chaotic universe. The Ancient Starry Sky Road. This was a general term that referred to a specific starry sky road. The chaotic universe was vast and boundless, and the chaotic world was only its core. There were thousands of chaotic beings cultivating in it, but there were also some ancient living beings in the entire chaotic universe. These ancient living beings were very powerful. They had created their own starry sky road in the starry sky, and cast their race in a certain starry field. Only by walking on this starry sky road could one reach their place. The giant beast clan of the starry sky had their own starry sky road. Only by walking along this starry sky road could one reach their ancestral land. Otherwise, even if one was the strongest throughout the ages, it would be extremely difficult to find their ancestral land. Rumble. A ray of starlight shot up from the central domain. Although this ray of starlight was not dazzling, it gave off a simple and unadorned feeling. There were two figures moving forward in the starlight. Chi. This ray of starlight was like thunder and lightning as it streaked across the vast starry sky. Looking up at the starry sky in the central domain, one would only think of it as a shooting star and would not pay much attention to it. Chi. The sea of stars surged and the great stars rotated. Yi Xian stood on an ancient starry sky road, surrounded by the vast sky. Both of them were covered by the starry sky, and their speed was erratic, giving off an unfathomable feeling. This is the ancient starry sky road. Yi Xian sensed everything in the outside world. When he looked down at the starry sky under his feet, a touch of surprise flashed across his eyes. He was indeed in the starry sky of the universe, but he also felt that he was not in the starry sky, but was shuttling through the starry sky along a strange trajectory. This strange shuttling did not seem like a space-time technique, nor did it seem like any escape technique. It was like a person entering a strange mountain. What was originally a rugged mountain path suddenly became a flat road, allowing the person to walk on this road to reach the top of the mountain. This feeling was very strange. Even Yi Xian could not see any problems with it. However, Yi Xian could sense that even though he was traveling at an extremely fast speed along this star path, the universe outside wasn't affected at all. The ancient star path is a path opened by some ancient life forms. It is said that it is greatly related to Chaos Star Masters. Otherwise, outsiders would not be able to comprehend the secrets of the ancient star path. Although Zhang Haotian was extremely displeased that Yi Xian had kidnapped him, he still explained to Yi Xian. Chaos Star Master. Yi Xian's eyes lit up as a mysterious strand of astral power appeared in his body. He began to meditate and sensed the ancient star road under his feet. As expected. In just a few dozen breaths of time, Yi Xian's eyes lit up. He indeed felt a slight difference. The strand of astral power in his body was indeed compatible with the ancient star path. This ancient star path must be related to Chaos Star Masters. The only thing that disappointed Yi Xian was that he did not cultivate the Chaos Star Master's inheritance, the astral origin art. Instead, he let his avatar cultivate it. If his avatar was here, it would definitely be able to sense the mysteries of the ancient star path. Thinking of his avatar, Yi Xian did not know what realm his avatar had cultivated to. After so many years, his avatar had cultivated the boundless secular technique and the astral origin art. It had even broken through to the immortal realm before him. Furthermore, it only cultivated 2 techniques. His avatar's realm must be higher than his original body's. Yi Xian really wanted to go to the great southern Dou region and take a look at his avatar's situation. Although he could use a secret technique to sense his avatar, it was only right to touch it in the real world. His avatar had always been one of Yi Xian's trump cards. It was just that he had never used it. After so many years, it was indeed time for him to go back and take a look. Perhaps his avatar would give him an unimaginable surprise. While Yi Xian was pondering, he and Song Haotian were still advancing along the ancient star path. 3 years had passed since they began their journey, and they did not encounter any dangers along the way. However, when it was the 10th year, the first problem finally appeared. Rumble. The starry sky compass rotated and reflected the first punctuation. The Tsang clan star chart also reflected the first punctuation. Although the 2 were the same, there was a slight difference. The difference was that there was a small fork in the road. The starry sky compass indicated to go to the left and the star map indicated to go to the right. Although the 2 were on the left and right, they caused Yi Xian to stop and think. Where did you get this star chart? Song Haotian was stunned on the spot as he looked at the endlessly flickering starry sky compass. He never thought that Yi Xian would also have a star map in his possession. Moreover, it was almost exactly the same as his star map. However, Song Haotian's eyes were very sharp. He discovered the difference because the starry sky compass in Yi Xian's hand had an ancient aura. It should be an extremely ancient artifact. Compared to his Tsang clan star chart, it had a mottled aura of time. How do I proceed? Looking at the 2 star charts in front of him, Yi Xian fell into deep thought. Although they were both moving towards the same punctuation, Yi Xian felt that it was absolutely not so simple. The starry sky compass was given to him by Eternal Shadow. Even Eternal Shadow did not know that he would obtain a new star chart later on. If he followed the direction indicated by the starry sky compass, would it contain Eternal Shadow's scheme? However, if he followed the Tsang clan star chart, although he would be able to reach the ancestral land of the star beasts, would he be able to meet that taboo character? With 2 choices placed before Yi Xian began to consider carefully. Follow the path indicated by the starry sky compass. In just 3 breaths of time, Yi Xian made his decision. No matter what Eternal Shadow's scheme was, he had to find that taboo character. Even if there were endless dangers ahead, he had to continue walking. Although the Tsang clan star chart would lead him to the ancestral land of the star beasts and there might not be any dangers along the way, Yi Xian knew that he was not going to the ancestral land of the star beasts. He was going to find that taboo character. Therefore, he had to choose the direction indicated by the starry sky compass. Follow me. Yi Xian said in a deep voice and strode towards the left. This caused Song Haotian to be startled. You're going the wrong way. You should be going the right way. I'm not going the wrong way. Your star chart leads to the ancestral land of the star beasts, but that's not where I'm going. Yi Xian continued walking forward as he spoke. He was about to step onto the star path indicated by the starry sky compass. However, it was also at this moment that a terrifying beast roar sounded out from behind the 2 of them, accompanied by a boundless ferocious aura. This caused Yi Xian to stop in his tracks and abruptly turn around to look at the creatures behind him. Chapter 1544. Insolent humans, how did you set foot on my clan's star path? Roar. A ferocious roar filled the starry skies. A silver-white giant star beast, about 10 feet in size, stared at Yi Xian and Song Haotian like a small mountain. Although it looked huge, it was definitely a tiny existence among the giant star beasts. Although this silver-white giant star beast was small in size, its eyes were extremely intelligent. Compared to those ignorant giant star beasts, this silver-white giant star beast clearly had intelligence not inferior to humans. King Star Beast. Song Haotian was shocked as he recognized the origin of this beast at a glance. An intelligent giant star beast. Yi Xian had killed many giant star beasts in the past, but regardless of their cultivation level, they all lacked intelligence. This was the first time he saw an intelligent giant star beast, and a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. This one is the Tsang clan's patriarch, Song Haotian. Greetings, Your Excellency King Star Beast. Just as Yi Xian was examining the King Star Beast, Song Haotian had already hurriedly bowed. His entire person was extremely humble. Facing a colossus like the giant Star Beast clan, regardless of cultivation level, he could not afford to offend them. I've seen you before. You've been to my clan's ancestral land, but I remember the King Star Beast said that you are not allowed to set foot on this star path in the future. How dare you violate my king's decree? The silver-white giant star beast spoke in a low muffled voice. Its pair of furry claws paced back and forth on the star path, and its ferocious head slowly swayed as it sized up Yi Xian and Song Haotian. Your Excellency King Star Beast, please forgive me. It's not that I don't want to obey the King Star Beast's decree, but this person is threatening the lives of my Tsang clan to force me to bring him here. Your Excellency King Star Beast, please help me explain to the King Star Beast. Song Haotian was extremely humble, directly selling out Yi Xian without the slightest bit of guilt in his heart. This silver-white beast should be in its juvenile stage. Although it had the intelligence of a human, in front of Yi Xian and his companion, it gave off a sense of superiority and arrogance. What a bold human! Do you know that the giant beast clan of the Starry Sky Beasts never allows outsiders to enter? Do you want to die? The silver-white giant beast glared at Yi Xian with its ferocious mouth. A little beast dares to clamor in front of me. Boom! In the next moment, something that shocked Song Haotian to the extreme happened. Yi Xian's 5 fingers stretched out, causing the space around them to explode. That terrifying palm slammed onto the silver-white beast's body. Bang! One slap, just one slap, and the silver-white beast was directly slapped to the ground. Its silver-white fur was torn, and a large amount of blood sprayed out from its body. It even let out a painful howl. Beast Kings. So what? So what if it was an intelligent giant beast of the Starry Sky Beasts? In Yi Xian's eyes, this giant beast of the Starry Sky Beasts before him was at most an animal. Moreover, it was an animal with a low cultivation base, at most in the Dao querying realm. If a beast dared to clamor in front of him, it would not be Yi Xian's character if he did not teach it a lesson. Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward and strode towards the giant beast of the Starry Sky Beasts. The entire Starry Sky path trembled violently, and this quickly woke Song Haotian up. His face turned extremely pale. Stop it! Are you crazy? Song Haotian instantly blocked Yi Xian. He did not expect Yi Xian to be so bold as to injure this giant beast of the Starry Sky Beasts. One had to know that this giant beast of the Starry Sky Beasts was not low in spiritual intelligence. Yi Xian's actions had brought disaster upon the two of them. The giant beast of the Starry Sky Beasts were the most protective of their own. Not to mention killing a beast king with spiritual intelligence, even killing a beast without spiritual intelligence would incur the giant beast of the Starry Sky Beasts' frenzied pursuit. Moreover, Yi Xian had made a move on this Starry Sky path. This was simply inviting disaster upon themselves. Buzz! Yi Xian's figure flashed, and he directly passed by Song Haotian. In an instant, he appeared in front of the giant beast of the Starry Sky Beasts. This caused Song Haotian's expression to change slightly. This was because he actually saw the space-time energy surrounding Yi Xian. He was indeed from the space-time temple. No wonder he was so bold. Song Haotian's heart trembled. His eyes moved slightly, and he no longer tried to stop Yi Xian. Since Yi Xian was from the space-time temple, then he could also push all the blame to Yi Xian. After all, the giant beast of the starry sky beasts and the space-time temple had nothing to do with him. You beast, your cultivation is not high, but you are very noisy. Your flesh looks good. Perhaps it would be a good choice to skin you and pull out your bones. The 6 desires were emotionless, and heaven and earth were heartless. Yi Xian's voice was cold and emotionless. It even carried a touch of cruelty and brutality. He slowly lifted up the giant beast of the starry sky. The huge body of the giant beast of the starry sky was as light as a feather in Yi Xian's hand. Hey, you're not really going to kill him, are you? Song Haotian still had some misgivings and could not help but remind Yi Xian. Rip. Roar. In the next moment, an extremely bloody scene appeared. Yi Xian abruptly tore off one of the giant beast of the starry sky's claw. A large amount of blood spurted out, and the giant beast of the starry sky let out a miserable howl. This was a king beast of the starry sky, and an intelligent one at that. When had it ever been treated so cruelly? No. Human. Human. Don't kill me. The giant beast of the starry sky howled and begged for mercy. After witnessing Yi Xian's brutal actions with its own eyes, the excruciating pain coming from its broken claw terrified it. It also realized that this human in front of it could really kill it, not caring that it was a giant beast of the starry sky race. Little beast, why didn't you beg me earlier? Why did you have to suffer like this? Yi Xian laughed. He casually threw the king beast of the starry sky to the ground and rode on it. This caused the giant beast of the starry sky to tremble. It felt that Yi Xian actually wanted it to be his mount. Roar. The king beast of the starry sky roared in a low and trembling voice. It wanted to refuse Yi Xian's humiliation, but the next second, it quieted down because Yi Xian's killing intent had enveloped it. As long as it dared to refuse in the slightest, it would be cut into pieces. This was the first time it had seen such a horrifying and evil human. It had to endure the agony and endure. It could only endure the pain of its broken hand and let Yi Xian ride on it. It did not dare to show the slightest dissatisfaction. Let's go. Take me to your ancestral land. Yi Xian was not a bloodthirsty person, and he did not want to incur the giant beast of the starry sky's hatred. Everything he did was to intimidate the giant beast of the starry sky so that he could have the king beast of the starry sky as his guide. This would save him a lot of trouble. After all, only the giant beasts of the starry sky knew the dangers hidden in this astral path. You. Looking at the scene in front of him, Song Haotian's expression changed. He really wanted to retreat, but he knew that Yi Xian would not let him leave. However, if he followed Yi Xian to the ancestral land of the giant beasts of the starry sky, he would be torn apart alive by the giant beasts of the starry sky. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.